Welcome everyone to the FATED Path of Exile podcast, episode number 144. We should finally be live everywhere. Excuses for the delay because of mad technical difficulties. I'm going to, after Christmas, wipe my computer and install a new operating system, hopefully one that is not Windows. But since we're running late, without further delay, here is your co-host, BalorMage. How are you doing, Balor? Long time no see.
Fantastic. Loving it. Loving Pee-wee too.
Awesome. I didn't prepare statements to introduce our guests, so it's great that we have awesome guests who need no further introduction. Welcome with us, Lighty and Jousis.
Hello.
Wait, it's not the Jousis, but it's Jousis, right? Yeah, I always say
yes,
wrong.
it is pronounced Jousis. Here, I will press the button again.
On Twitter,
Exile.
on Twitter, I actually said "sweet baby Jousis," but yeah, no, it doesn't. The wordplay doesn't work with Jousis then. Who's
I've heard every
Jousis?
pronunciation under the sun, and I think it's funny.
Well, I'm glad we're finally back together again, better than we ever been. Maybe I can get the white balance still fixed on my cam so that I don't look so yellow. Oh, perfect. Okay, and now don't press any buttons, don't break anything. So yeah, so while we were having technical difficulties, I was just telling the boys how my game got into a state where all of a sudden my explosive grenades on my Merc were dropping my frames significantly, and I didn't know what to do, and then I wanted to reset the graphics settings to default, so I pressed options, navigate to the graphics tab, press defaults, it says it resets all settings. So you can't set one tab to defaults, but when you press defaults, you reset your entire settings. All your keybinds, all your input settings, all your user interface. I was like, no, are you for real? Is this a nightmare? In 2024, this state of accessibility? But then I figured out you can go into the production config and just delete all the lines in the display section, save it, and then restart, and then it fetches them from the default template while maintaining your other tabs. So it's just a UI issue because they don't provide a tab for that, but if you know how to do it, you can do it. Now, that's great. So I already told you that I'm playing Merc. I'll talk about my experience in a bit, I guess, but I'll give you the chance first to introduce yourself to the audience in terms of what have you been playing, like what context can we put what you will tell us into, what do we need to know about your league start so we know how to judge what you're saying.
Oh, pick a person first.
Yeah, I need podcast host needs to pick a person. You can't ask an open-ended question without saying who should answer it. All right, Jousis.
All right. So in the playtests, you may have seen a post-stream interview with Jonathan where he said someone in one of the playtests found a crossbow in a playtest that wasn't supposed to have a crossbow and was killing all the bosses in 3 hits.
Yeah, and so they weren't allowed to use any of the footage?
Yep, I was not allowed to use any of that footage because it shows me trivializing bosses with, broken content. And so I was like, I wasn't even doing it to kill the bosses in 3 hits. I just really, really liked the audio visual of the shotgun and the gameplay of it. And so I went Merc again. I picked Witch Hunter because it has Explode on Kill as its first 2 Ascendancy points that I picked.
Absolutely.
And the rest of its stats, like it gets Culling Strike and the opposite of Culling Strike, where it does it on full health. And that's just generic damage that works no matter what skill you're using. And I thought it was really powerful and I would want to experiment with stuff. So that's what I picked. And I found a really good crossbow setup and I'm happy.
And where are you up to? How far?
So I'm currently in the Black Chambers in Cruel Act 3. So right before maps, right before the final Doriani fight. So the
That's
setup
pretty
I'm
far.
using, yeah,
How
the
much did
setup
you
I'm
play?
using right now, it's really cool. Explosive Shot is supposed to be used to, like, you shoot one bolt and it explodes, and it's used to detonate grenades early, and it's also able to detonate the gas cloud that's generated by the gas grenade. So you can throw a gas grenade, shoot an explosive shot to detonate it early, and then shoot another explosive shot to detonate the gas cloud, and it does a lot of damage. However, there's a support gem, Scatter Shot, which causes it to shoot a 3-round burst, and there aren't many support gems that do stuff like that. Like, most of the support gems are like, oh, do 25% more damage or have like faster cooldown recovery or reload speed. This triples the damage of the skill and makes it so that it detonates the grenades and the gas cloud in one skill press. And another thing, this support gem,
Wait. Just a second. Scattershot does have a less damage and less attack speed and cast speed.
It's 20% less.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to point it out. It's not exactly three times as much.
It's not exactly triple, but it's basically triple. The attack speed doesn't matter because it's a crossbow. It just affects the tempo of the burst. It doesn't actually affect like your damage output. And so the other crucial fact is the second and third shot, you are not slowed while doing that. And the first explosive is instant. I think this is a bug. So I can move I'm walking at full speed. I shoot, I'm still walking at full speed for the entire 3-round burst, and then I get slowed a little bit for the reload, which is only half a second. So I'm effectively moving at full speed while being an artillery cannon, and everything is exploding. And then for bosses, I just throw gas grenades on top of them and shoot the explosive shot.
Nice.
So it's a really, really nice setup. It's really generically good. Oh, and for the passive tree, I just went every damage node and movement speed node that I could see. Defenses, utility, what are those?
Yep. Do damage, go fast.
Speed is all you need. Because when you can move at full speed, you can kite everything. So you just increase your movement speed, prioritize your boots. I only have 20% of my boots, and I'm outrunning everything. I barely ever dodge roll.
Did you get the damage on low life cluster in the vicinity of Mercstar?
Is it the one that increases the culling strike threshold?
Nope.
Because I got that one. Damage on low life. Difference between PoE 1 and 2. Low life is 35% in PoE 2.
Yeah, but it's like 8 nodes for a total of 240% increased damage against enemies on low life, plus damage against enemies on low life is lucky, which depending on what kind of roll range you have might be good.
I'm not doing lightning, so I don't prioritize lucky. And so if you amortize is the word for this. If you do 35% increased damage to enemies while they're at 35% life or less, that's basically 10% increased damage over their whole health bar.
It's actually less because you're going to cull them anyway.
Yeah, with cull. So
yeah,
I'd rather have a 10% increased damage node than one of those nodes.
Yep. It was a lot easier to use nodes like that when low life is 50%. But at 35, it's like...
Well, it still is in PoE 1, but...
the punishment curse that does, like, enemies take 88% more damage, or increased damage while they're at low life. That curse is actually a lot more damage than a lot of people give it credit for.
Oh, yeah. Ooh.
Oh, and the passive tree, so... I was heading towards the Ranger initially because I wanted more movement speed, and it has like wall chain and stuff, but Explosive Shot doesn't chain or pierce or anything, so I respect those nodes. And what I'm actually going for now is in the Templar section of the tree, there is a Claw cluster that is just 3 separate notables of 25% increased attack damage right next to each other. So I'm pathing all the way over to the Claw just to get way more damage.
What on earth? I just opened my passive tree to look at it. That's so much attack speed.
That's damage, I think. Unless you're looking at
it's attack
else.
Damage, right. 25, 25, 25. Just 3 different notables.
And the rest of those are 10.
Yep. All right, sure.
Yep, so I'm pathing all the way over there. And on the way, there's, in the Marauder section, there's 12% Fizz gained as extra fire, which is like some of the only multiplicative damage on the whole tree. Anyway, my introduction's been really long. Do we want to have someone else talk?
It's cool that we can branch off your introduction. I mean, everyone got to chime in a little bit, but yeah, I'd love to hear from the other people what they're playing. Lighty, what was your starter when you could still play?
Yep. So I started with a witch, and I went blood mage. I didn't look at anything before playing this game at all because I wanted to look at it just like experience it all fresh.
Blind run.
Yep. And so I was mostly just doing minions, like summoning stuff and minions. And I started with the skeletal arsonists, which basically they just walk around and throw Molotov cocktails at people. That looked cool, so I wanted to do that. And the passive tree, I realized really quickly that minions were not staying alive, kind of no matter what I did. So I just gave up on keeping them alive. And instead, I grabbed all of the minion revive faster and hooked them up with last gasp. So they all get one shot by everything. But that was happening even when I had 15 points in the defenses on every boss fight. Like they would just get cleaved and then all be gone because they're inherently quite weak defensively. But now they get one shot. They persist for 4 seconds, which is that amount of uptime. And then they all die. And then they come back in like 1 second. So it's as if they're always with me. And then the rest of the tree is like efficient defensive nodes or mana or aura effect and life, whatever I can grab, but just all minion stuff. They do like, I've tried a few of the minions playing as a blood mage so far, like the accessible ones from the skill tree. So that's the archers, the warriors, the reavers, the ones I have access to as of the first 3-4 acts, I guess. Frost mage, and none of them seem to do close to the amount of damage that the arsonists do, because I think that they're like somewhat shotgunning or something. But I have them hooked up to scatter shot, and which is like LMP and PoE1, and then martial tempo, which is like faster attacks, and they just throw Molotovs faster. So at the moment, I have a lot of spirit on gear. I've tried to maximize the amount of spirit I have, which works for auras and your minion reservation. I've really not running any auras, sans the mandatory Blood Witch Life Remnant thing. And I have 8 minions following me around, and it's kind of a visual cluster. It's kind of laggy when they all attack at once because there's 8 of them throwing 3 projectiles every like 0.7 seconds. But yeah, things are dying. Like bosses are dying relatively. Every boss I fought with, I've at most died 1 or 2 times, and they've died, within a reasonable amount of time. It's not quick, but it's fine. And then I'm supplementing their damage, which is predominantly fire, with flammability, which is different in PoE2. It's not so much a cast on an area as you cast, and then there's a delay, and then it kind of pops off the area. So that's been new. And then Flame Wall, which seems to be pretty popular at the moment, because it's just a lot of flat damage and really accessible to just kind of cast. So that's hooked up to a really fun new support called Fortress, which makes it in a circle. That's nice.
Is there any other wall skill in the game? Because it says any wall skill will be a circle. Is there Frost Wall still?
I assume that works the same way. I don't know why.
Okay, I had no idea whether it's in the game.
Well, the difference is Frost Wall doesn't give you like a fuck ton of flat damage, but
yeah, exactly. Why would you use it? You just to lock yourself in a circle and die because you can't go out.
I don't know.
You can trap the enemy in the circle.
Yeah, you lock the enemy.
People are putting a wall in the choke because the chokes are really narrow. You can put a frost wall and then shoot frost bolts through it.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah, there's like a lot. They're similar to, this is a bit of a tangent, but the minions don't body block. They're amorphous. I walk right through them. However, totems are physical objects. So like when I was playing a warrior, you could just sit there casting a shockwave totem in a small corridor, i.e. right before the end of Act 2 on the Dreadnought, where it's all small corridors, and they'll just block a whole line. So there's like some things. I don't know if any of the minions are physical objects, but none of the ones I've seen. Yeah. So either way, so the witches, I'm about to get to Cruel, Act 1, but I was having technical issues for the past 2 days, so my progress has been hindered. But during that time, I leveled a Mercenary to basically Act 3, and then I've got a Warrior also close to Act 3 now. And the witches by far felt the worst leveling when it comes to the amount of damage through how I've built them. Like the warrior, albeit melee, and it does feel like melee. I couldn't get that stink off of the character of it being like I'm fighting bosses in melee range, but it's like the strongest auto attack in just the mace strike is just like was one-shotting everything for the first near 3 acts. It felt a bit comical. Like there's definitely I have some massively questionable balance things from my perspective, but yeah, everything like nothing feels egregious. Nothing really feels difficult to me. But it's been like a pretty okay time just walking through. I mean, it's like there's so little to go off of at the moment for me. So it's like the experience is but a little step in the doorway of the game, you know. It's not been offensive so far, I would say. Like it's been totally fine.
All right, fair enough. Balor, I'm sure you also started Summoner, as that's something that people want to see from you, but did you also go Witch, or is there another Ascendancy that you experiment with?
Witch Infernalist we started, because Minion is the only one that had Minion nodes.
Yep.
There are actually other builds for Minions that I think will be pretty good, but I think Infernalist was going to be the best start. Other than the first 6 to 8 levels, which was absolute garbage because I did full minions right from the word go. Don't do that. The first like 8 odd levels is absolute trash.
And how is that? Why?
Minions can't live early. They just cannot live. They take too long to revive. They fall over at a breath. Use a spell to begin with if you're starting, and just do like ED Contagion for like 8 to 10 levels or whatever. But
fair. From
like level 10ish onwards, one tap every boss, full screen automated clears everywhere. The skeletal snipers can just one tap basically every single boss through the campaign. The arsonists do about 20% less single target damage than the snipers, but you don't have to aim them specifically and make sure that you hit the things. The snipers are technically better if you play well. The arsonists play themselves for like 20% less damage, which is still high. So I've gone with arsonists now. I got auto looping popcorn SRS on them as well, which is just they just do their own thing. I basically don't have to cast while clearing. I clear everything on the full screen at run speed, and I'm super tanky. I haven't quite made it to maps yet, and I have like 4,000 energy shield and 1,200 life. And so, I don't know. I feel like this feels like a pretty average PoE 1 build. Like that's the speed and ease at which I'm just running through the entire campaign. I have been looking around at other people's streams to try and find something that looks this good, and I haven't found anything yet. Feels strong. I'm happy. I want to keep playing minions. I say it's all automated. To be fair, it's all as automated as it can be. I do still have like 4 active skills to use. Like, I don't think we're ever going to get Holy Relic levels of just like, you just run around and right click and you do nothing. But like, I wasn't even expecting to get this automated, right? I was expecting to have to use like 7 different skills and real good positioning and stuff like that, because that's just what I thought it was going to be. And it ended up being like, no, I can actually automate like a decent amount of the build. And I just have to like manage cooldowns and curses, and it's great. Absolutely fantastic. I'm in love with it.
All right. That sounds like pretty much the opposite of my experience. So I went in because I did a lot of Mercenary gameplay, because I was really hyped about WASD and crossbows in general, right? So when we did the gameplay test in June in LA, we didn't get Mercenary, but when I was at Gamescom, I played Mercenary a lot, and I felt it was really fun. So I started it, knowing that it was probably the most popularly tested class. I knew beforehand there would be nothing insanely broken or insanely strong, because they had so many people playtesting it beforehand in early access and in the gameplay demos, right? So they knew how to balance it. But yeah, while I was playing it already, like people were telling me, from the latest playtest that they did, people were saying it's a little undertuned. I was like, okay, but it's fun, right? And you can mechanically outplay. But yeah, really, it never really took off insanely, right? Like if you over leveled a little bit and you got like good gear and you got and I'm doing the traditional style, right? Like I'm doing actually fragmentation rounds, which is the shotgun kind of skill, with explosive grenades. Explosive grenades, great, right? They're fun, they're good to clear. It's a little bit annoying that they bounce off of enemies, right? Like people have complained about that before from the demo, and unintuitive at least, but realistic, right? That they bounce off of walls is good, because if you play around it, you can kind of utilize that to place them more reliably under the enemies. And yeah, the scatter shot for overlaps, and what is it, infernal shot or something like that, the support gem that reduces lightning and cold damage and gives extra as fire. That's also super. Yeah,
I wanted to jump in. The grenades, not only do they bounce like off the ground, off enemies, off walls, there are areas of the game where you're like standing on a raised platform and there are no railings and there's just a pit to the sides. The grenades will roll into the pit. They will fall off the map geometry and go explode on the ground off the map.
And not deal damage to your enemies.
And not deal damage because they're in 3D space. You'll notice this as well using the scatter shot with the shotgun. Some of the shots impact the ground at a distance because it's actually firing in a 3D cone.
That's actually kind of cool.
It is kind of cool, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I was having some fun earlier so I'm shooting explosive shot. I'm in one of the ultimatums where you go up and down the elevator thing, and there are enemies like on a ledge above me, so I can target them. And the angle at which it targets them and shoots the shots upwards it did not look correct. I was aiming forwards, and the shots were going straight up into the camera.
Damn. Yeah. So yeah, what else did I want to say about my starter? I started in hardcore actually, because I was like, hey, there's no downside to you. All started in softcore trade, I assume.
Yep.
Solo self-gun, but yeah.
Oh, cool.
Same
I was
thing.
like, it's early access. It's a small community. We all start from scratch. There's no economy, so I was like, definitely trade, because we're testing, and I haven't traded a single item so far. Nothing. Right, I don't even know, when do you unlock the currency trading? Is that
Cruel.
later in Cruel?
Yep. As soon as
But
you
yeah,
get
so-
Cruel, fastest exists.
It took me some time to beat Act 1, because before I wanted to do the count, I wanted to grind out a new bow, and that just didn't happen. Like, I had the level 10 bow base, and I was level 16 plus, and I was like, I'm gonna grind this out to get the level 16 crossbow base, and then never dropped. But I kept augmenting my bow, right? I hadn't found any exalts. Some people told me they found multiple exalts in Act 1. I didn't get an exalt. First exalt I dropped was from the Act 1 boss when I beat it. And that was also funny, because it doesn't instantly drop the loot, right? Like, it died, I poured it out, I was in town, and I almost went to Act 2, and then I was like, wait a moment, I didn't get any loot. I went back to the portal, like, I was thinking I switched off my item highlights or something like that, and then stood there for a moment, and all of a sudden the loot dropped. It's like, really weird. Like, the boss did like a death queef or something like that, and all of a sudden the loot was there, and there was my exalted orb, and I was like, if I had missed that, I would have been really mad. But yeah, I ended up augmenting the bow with sockets, and putting flat damages from the runes on there, and then also exalted some flat damages on it, and the bow lasted me a long time, right? Like, I think the bow lasted me until like level 28 or something like that. Requires level 10 bow. Crossbow. I always say bow when I mean crossbow, because I refuse to use two syllables. And what I wanted to say still, before we go into the discussion round again, is I died in Act 2 to the guy who used to be called the Perennial King, who now has an actual name that I keep forgetting. Gerandus, right? Gerandus? Or something like that. Jarnadus?
No idea.
Something with a lot of J's and A's. Well, the guy you fight 3 times, or 2 times.
Oh,
in
the
different
lightning
forms.
sand guy. The end?
Yeah, in the
Yeah,
very
okay.
tiny arena.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he does this slam, right? Where he slams the ground and then he has an expanding circle that has a contracting circle in the middle. And it just all happens so fast. And it's a very small arena. So at first I ran away from the middle, seeing the expanded circle. And then I got one shot, right? And I didn't see that the safe spot would have been in the middle in the contracting circle. So instantly learned that. But what I also learned is apparently that deals lightning damage. I thought at the time that it dealt fire damage, but it dealt an exact 423 damage to me. And then when I was in softcore, I went back into the boss, I tried to reproduce it, and it never dealt more damage than like 320 to me. So on the very first time I got that skill, I got savagely crit and taken out of hardcore. That was a nice experience. But other than that, it was pretty fun. And now I'm in the end of... no, I'm actually in Act 3 now. I ended Act 2 earlier today. But yeah,
that
took a long time.
Was the first wall, I would say, I hit. Nothing has really been remote. That was maybe like a speed bump, I guess is a better way to describe it. But there, I found no natural way, especially post-ascension, which I think I would have been strictly better off not ascending. But I found no natural way.
Wait, you blood mage. Obviously, you would have been better not ascending. That
yeah,
was
I don't know.
Clear.
That's
I bet you didn't look at stuff beforehand.
Yeah, I didn't look at well, yeah, and also you're shoehorned into picking the first thing with blood mage. There's
yeah,
no
exactly.
Option, but the first
that's
one,
exactly what I mean.
And it seems essentially strictly detrimental if you're playing a summoner. But I digress. So it's like I had limited regen, maybe 650, 700 life, which was from what I gauged pretty average at the time, if not even higher. And my flammability cost 80 mana and 80 life. I had to keep it up basically for most of the fight. You have one flask that you can't really craft because there's no alteration. So what I had to do was basically farm that area until I dropped enough flasks that I could trans and aug that rolled the gain charges per second, because I had zero way of sustaining in that fight, since it's effectively like a battle of attrition as I was entering the different phases. Because I don't want to spoil the fight, but there's a lot of moving parts that you're just like kind of slightly getting chipped here and there, and like that on top of me casting caused me to actually have to sit there for I had to sit for an hour and go farm that dreadnought until I could get a flask with the appropriate roll. So at least I was passively regenning life in some fashion. That was like the first wall I hit. That was like gear bound, I guess.
Wait, you're talking about the Gerandas, the end of Act 2, right?
Yes.
Like basically the end of Act 2 boss. Yeah.
I
was talking about the first version of him that you fight when you're in the fortress in that tiny room. But yeah. No, that's still valuable. Well, I just wanted to point out the difference for the viewers. That was the first
had
wall.
Bosses that have killed me like 7, 8, 9, 10 times while I try and kill it. I haven't hit any walls that I couldn't get through.
No, I haven't died to anything remotely. I think 3 was 3 or 4 at most was the the Titan guy. I don't remember his name, but that was only by my own stupidity at not realizing one of his attacks shotgunned forward effectively and rolling backwards. I was eating every chunk of the projectiles. But
right.
Yeah, but also in most of these boss fights, I'm kind of just holding spacebar because I'm not doing a whole lot as I'm watching the arsonists just Molotov the shit out of stuff. So I got more time to look at what's going on, I guess, than maybe you would for a melee. But yeah, I'm just fat rolling everywhere.
Yeah, so no, the Colossus is definitely like I think the first progression wall, and I think a lot of the death notifications that I saw in hardcore were people going into the Colossus not knowing that they need to gear and build stuff.
I've seen a lot of wolf deaths at the boss at the end of Act 1 because
certainly
the visual representation of the beams is not remotely equal to the AoE that they cause. So like when the thin beams that go down, they're much larger, the actual ignition radius at the bottom, like they're significantly wider than that little thin beam.
Yeah. And the thin beam only indicates the center. I thought you were meant that they're desynced.
No. It's just people see the thin beam and think I could walk between the beams, not realizing that that's the middle of the circle. That's like, and then you get frozen, and then if you're frozen, you're probably just dead there because there's not many ways to be unfrozen at that stage. So I've seen people die to that quite often.
Yeah, so I had the advantage that I already played Mercenary at Gamescom, and the section that I got to play was exactly that end of Act 1. And I have uploaded footage to my channel even where I fought that boss and I died. And with the pre-made character at the Gamescom gameplay demo, I mean, I didn't have show life and mana levels, so I don't know how much life my character had, but I probably had half that. I had like 200, 240 life maybe then, and with my over preparation trying to farm for the crossbow and then going into that fight, it was significantly easier this time around. So I did it deathless, obviously in hardcore. I made it to Act 2, so couldn't have gone past it without it. But yeah, what was Jousis? I'm wondering, did you have any bosses that stood out to you?
Like in terms of difficulty, or that I liked them?
Either, both. But because you didn't right away have a super OP crossbow grenade build, right?
So the crossbow is actually really good from level 1. If you start fragmentation rounds, I didn't really like explosive grenade, to be honest. But you start the fragmentation rounds and you get the double barrel support, so it's a double barrel shotgun and you walk around.
Yeah, definitely using that.
Yeah, I use
those
that
are made for each other.
Flash grenade. I really like. It does 400% more stun buildup, and there's a support gem to make it do 50% more stun buildup, and you can throw 3 grenades with the right setup, and they have extra chance to explode again, and you can also put debilitate support on them if you get level 3 support gems. So
fun fact about the flash grenades that I want to throw in is that they don't only blind your enemies, but they also blind other players and your allies. Just
you can blind yourself with them. You throw a flashbang at your feet, it blinds you, but blind is like a 20% accuracy penalty, and maybe my character just has way too much accuracy, but it doesn't affect me at all. So if you're getting surrounded by like 50 white mobs and you can't dodge roll through them, throw a flashbang at your own feet. It's really effective because it heavy stuns all of them, and they tend to like jump backwards when they get heavy stunned. And it gives you like 3 seconds to kill them before they get back up. So highly recommend flash grenade, and especially because you get it so early. It's even good enough at like heavy stunning bosses. It's like 2 to 3 uses of flash grenade to heavy stun bosses for me. So that was how
they also
I
come with 3 charges right away, so you can like
directly... So it only comes with 1, but really close to the mercenary start, you can get +1 grenade charges and throw an additional grenade.
And then you put second wind.
You don't need second wind because it actually makes it recharge slower.
Right.
So it only takes 3 seconds to recharge, so it's really good without it. And there is a specific crossbow implicit that makes you shoot another grenade. So you can shoot 3 grenades. So with I have my DPS crossbow on Weapon Swap 1, and I have my grenade crossbow on Weapon Swap 2. And so all of my grenade nodes are on Weapon Swap 2 passives, and all of my crossbow nodes are on Weapon Swap 1. I recommend doing it that way if you haven't already put all your points in. I had to respec significantly, and it was fairly expensive in terms of gold. But yeah, flash grenade, I'm still using it, and I'm level 66. I just got into maps. I just beat the last boss before maps like literally 10 minutes ago, and used flash grenade, and it was very good. About that boss fight, I don't want to spoil too hard. It is the Act 3 final boss, so it's not that much of a spoiler. Doriani, there is a move that he does where it's a giant spinning red laser. It's like a 60-degree cone that circles the entire boss arena, so it really can't be dodged. You sort of have to dodge roll through it. I had 0 lightning resistance. That move killed me in 1 hit no matter what I did. It was impossible to survive that move. I simply DPS'd him hard enough that he didn't get to use that move, and that's how I beat him.
Damn.
Man, I need to get into maps. Oh.
I'm about to run my first map. I'll let you know how it goes. Players are cursed with elemental weakness. Let's look at my defenses. I have 38 fire res, 17 cold res, 21 lightning res, and 0 chaos res. Let's go.
I actually haven't really felt like res matters too much, which is strange, but every time I fought a boss that felt like they did a large portion of a type of elemental damage, when I invested more into resistances on that boss, it feel like it made really no difference versus me just getting an extra couple hundred life.
It
in
feels
most cases.
like physical is the one you have to worry about the most, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's not. It doesn't expect you to have 75% physical resistance. Like it's balanced around you not having any armor, and then elemental stuff, for the most part is telegraphed and dodgeable.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking forward to my final Ascendancy nodes, which at this rate, I've been doing the Trials of Ascendancy literally 10 levels over leveled because I tried them when I wasn't 10 levels over leveled and it was miserable. So I'll probably get my last Ascendancy points when I'm level 85. So that one on the Witch Hunter gives you like there were equivalent mechanics in PoE 1 where it's like you have a bubble that only takes elemental damage and it refreshes like every 10 seconds or something.
Mhm.
It's based on your armor and evasion, and it takes you get like 50% less armor and evasion. So I feel like I'm gonna have a big boy elemental damage drain tank bubble and simply not take physical damage by kiting and dodging and killing everything. And
There's
that's my
a
plan for my defensive
there's a
layers.
unique armor. I don't remember. I think it's called Blackguard or something that makes your armor apply to elemental damage, which is
That's
kind of
pretty
cool. Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know the way it's worded. Makes it says your armor. It didn't say instead, but I think the wording is making it sound like armor only works for elemental damage. But yeah,
There is a notable on the tree that says you defend with double armor against critical hits.
Ooh.
So it feels like there's a good way to get damage reduction there.
Mm.
Especially if that double armor applies to elemental critical hits, that seems really good.
Yeah.
And there's right next to iron reflexes to convert evasion rating to armor. There's also like gain 8% of evasion rating as extra armor. Like there's some ways to scale defenses here that are really cool.
What do you?
I'm
kind of a
glad there's
tangent,
no
but-
percent life on the tree everywhere because you can either do what I'm doing and your defensive layer is that you're fast and you're killing everything, or you can make yourself have 1 billion damage reduction.
Do you? What do you think of the tree visually?
Visually,
Yeah, like the squiggles. There's a lot of squiggles everywhere.
I like how
You know what I'm saying?
the
Like-
clusters are in the shape of the thing that they're trying to be. Like the shield nodes
Yeah.
are shaped in a shield, the spear is shaped in a spear.
I did
I
not
like
notice
the
that.
feature. I
Yeah.
like the feature in Path of Building where it only like it changes the color scheme a bit, where it de-emphasizes stuff that I'm not trying to look at. I like that feature in PoB. I feel like we need something like it because if I'm searching for something, like if I search for projectile damage, it's actually quite difficult to find all of
Yeah.
the nodes on this tree because it's so subtle and nothing else washes out.
It's funny you mention that because that system effectively exists for support gems and skills that are kind of geared towards your class, right? They have ones that are
Mhm.
like whatever proclivities to whatever your type of thing is. So I'm a little surprised that they didn't do it for the tree in the same way, where it's like show relevant, like at least a toggleable option that was like show relevant or show, analogous fucking things, kind of like they have for the skill gems, because it would have been maybe just like a cool thing to toggle on, because it's all probably tag based anyway, right? So I feel like that could be done. Because the skill gem one I think is quite useful. Like, not that it's obviously there's the option and you would know to do it if you're more learned in this game or just ARPGs in general, you probably clock that. But just to have it so when you click on a minion, it shows you these are popular things that are roughly associated with this minion or this ability, versus like then you could click it off to really get the more PoE type experience, which is like, what if I put this on this? Does this also, like, it works? Like, it doesn't let you put things that don't work, but at least it's like maybe less than, you might not want to like reduce duration on something that has a duration, but maybe obviously you would if you're trying to do a loop or something. There's a way to do that. So I like the training wheels kind of. I think it's good. That plus the tutorial. Like, I had the tutorial on because I was just curious what it felt like. And I was trying to I was about to like huff paint to like kill some brain cells so I could like really experience the tutorial, And it felt pretty good, where it's like showing you what's happening. There was still a couple things that seemed like you could get caught in a pitfall knowledge base wise, but overall the tutorial, I was pretty impressed with it. Something I feel like if we had the tutorial and especially the glossary with keywords and able to link those and like look to keyword, if we had that in PoE1, I think it would have saved many a person from quitting at a time, because it's just to have that little bit of like the gutters up, of being able to see what's going on, like not knowing what bleed does or not knowing what an ailment does and the extent of its effect. Like it's all pretty nice that's in the tutorial now.
I very much enjoy the new
The videos?
accessibility of the
the video. The videos are cool.
the videos as well. The videos are
Yeah,
very,
those are
very
good.
good when you're like
Right.
picking out
Yeah.
active gems. I really like all of the, like, you can hold alt and hover, like, what does threshold mean?
Yeah. There's
Absolutely.
a fun fact about that though. There's no limit to the amount of windows you can open. So I had I opened up like 90 at one point just to see, and you actually it doesn't pause your game, so you could cover your screen with like by holding alt and just keep linking the exact same thing, and you can also play the game with it happening in the background and just start, and it lets you.
But could you play the game?
Programmed UIs before.
It eats
There's
your clicks,
definitely a ticket
like,
for that.
like the layer above, like the layer of it eats your clicks if you're trying to click on something. So you can't actually like click on enemies, but it just keeps clicking on keywords if they're showing up. But it does flood your screen visually.
Oh boy.
There's absolutely a ticket for that, and they just haven't got around to it. As someone who programs UIs, like,
that's good.
They
definitely like to prevent duplication or something.
It's like someone made the tooltips, and they're like, okay, great, the tooltips work, and then they don't have time to bug fix like enforcing only one tooltip at a time or something.
That's okay.
I may have imagined it, but some of those videos on the skills have a different person voicing it. And is it Ziggy D?
I didn't notice that.
I thought
some of them
in the early access, like when they flew us out to LA to test it and stuff. I swear there was it was just Eben was the one doing the voiceover, and I haven't listened too closely to the new one. Here, I have a level 15 skill gem right now. Let me.
I think Eben did most of them because it's the same voice for most of them, but some of them have a different voice, and I'm pretty sure it's Ziggy D.
But
maybe I'm
wouldn't
imagining
you be
it. Maybe I'm wrong.
100% sure if it was Ziggy D?
Yeah, I didn't hear a good day,
Eben.
so clearly it's not him.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm hearing things. But
is it possible that Ziggy D is not real and he's actually just in your like schizo mind as like
I don't know. There's a different voice, and that the one that's a different voice for some of them sounds like
I'm
Ziggy
listening
D.
to it right now.
It's good because maybe the gloves are too tight, Baylor, and it's cutting off circulation, and you're just manifesting Ziggy.
I feel like he'd have told us if he did that, because it would be just really cool to have done. So
I could ask him on Twitter right now if you want. I'll just add him and say, "Are you the voices that Baylor hears?" And we'll see what he says.
It sounds like it. Either that, or I'm just like hearing Ziggy D in my head. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
On the note of like the game explaining things well and better, and the tooltips all being great, the tutorial, how do you feel about support gems not having symbols on the skill bar anymore? Is that okay? Because you can just open the skill tab and see the support gems there.
I never used the information. I don't know if that information was ever useful.
Useful information. It was just clutter on my skill, making it look.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. Except, there's one use. Sometimes you could spell things like boob and ass with your skill gems. It
but you could also instantly at one glance tell whether your skill is already linked or not, or whether you have switched the support gems to something else.
Yeah, but you can't do that by accident in this game. In the defense, I'm not a huge fan of defending PoE, but I will say you can't. It's hard to fuck that one up, I think, because you can't have duplicate skills. You can't have accidentally
you don't have 6 of them in your off-weapon gems leveling up, and you've accidentally equipped the wrong one or anything like that. Like it's
strict guardrails up. I feel like it's hard to brick something there.
Yeah. It's just a little thing that irked me the wrong way, and I was curious what you think about it. But then my follow-up question is, don't you think the support gem art in the skill tab does look very samey? Maybe it's because I'm only playing in 1080p and not in 4K, like I did on the Alienware displays at Gamescom, where the game looked stunning and amazing. But for me, all the red gems look just like a red blur, and all the green gems, with the exception of like
Yeah.
Pierce and some others, they just look like I can't tell, and I don't know whether it's just a way of getting used to it, because in PvE1 when I started playing, I also couldn't tell when I looked at a support gem without the tooltip which one it is, but they had a very still have a very distinct 2D art that has a
agree
very
with
high
that,
symbolic value, and those ones, while they look amazing and very much like gems, they're very blurry, and it's hard to tell which one's which.
There's a lot
Yeah,
going
I
on
feel
in
like-
all of them, so they're definitely less immediately identifiable in that menu.
It's something like when the artist is drawing it, they can see the whole thing and like see what the picture is supposed to be. When it ends up in game on your monitor and you're looking at it, it's so small that you can't make out the detail. What ends up happening is that people misinterpret what the picture is of, and like have a different picture in their mind of what that art actually is, and they'll like make up like what is that actually a picture of, and a lot of people have different answers for what it actually is a picture of, and I find it very funny.
Like a Rorschach test.
Yeah, and once you
Like
get
the ink
used
blotters.
to it, once you do that, you'll start recognizing it more.
I guess to Kat's point, if these are designed to have art on them and not just be a symbol, and the predominant feature of all the arts overbearingly is just the color that they're associated with. So I look at martial tempo versus scattershot versus chain versus encumbrance. I can't really tell what it is as much as just a lot of green, and that's probably could be it. Because it's with other things, I couldn't maybe tell at first glance between GMP and LMP, but other things were very obviously different because they were small symbols with basically 2 color schemes. This is like a shrunken image, so it's easier to blur, I guess. They could add a symbol here, though. I mean,
It feels to me like that phenomenon of art being easier to identify when it's big on your screen versus when it's in game and scaled down. I think that's sort of part of the artist's job to take that into account, and I'm pretty sure that would have applied to the old support gems just as much, which are far more legible.
It's very possible
Am I
that
the
person
only
who
one
drew this
not
has
even
no
looking at
fucking clue what this was for. Like, they could have
Like,
just
there's a
been like,
name on
Chris
every
did
gem.
say-
Why are we even looking?
There's
Yeah,
a name
there
if you
was
hover
a-
it.
Monsters.
I
There
was
was a,
saying, like, if I
there
look
was
at my
a
skill gem tab, I can't see at a single glance what my skill is linked with. I have to hover every single support gem because they're all a cloudy mess, and I can only tell whether they're red, green, or blue.
Sure.
They're beautiful, they look amazing, and they look also realistic. They look like real gems, right?
Catmaster. It's linked to the thing you put in it.
Okay, then assume for a
you
moment
made the sandwich.
that I'm opening a build that's not mine, right? Assume for a minute I'm looking at footage of someone's skill gem tab who is not hovering them all. Anyway, let's not get stuck on that topic. It's a silly topic. I just wanted to point it out. But one quick hook back, because it didn't point that out, and Blakey is in chat and clarified it. I don't know whether you're reading it, but he confirmed that no people are Ziggy or Eben.
All right. It still sounds like him though.
No one, yeah.
None of them are Eben?
Yeah, none of them.
What?
It's literally what he said. And he works at GGG, so I assume.
Oh, I guess I just misidentified the voice as Eben.
I guess New Zealand accent makes everything look very sound very samey.
Blame my Americanness. My
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like how for Chinese people, all white people look the same, right?
All right. I have a thing that potentially is gonna upset people in chat. Maybe you guys as well. I think the gearing, the struggle for gearing, and the lack of gear during the campaign is absolutely fantastic, and has felt better than any other ARPG I've ever played. The scarcity of loot is amazing. Nothing like Ruthless mode in PoE1. Way better. Designed this way, feels good. I actually don't want to see pretty much any buffs to it at all.
Wait, that's an unpopular take. You saying the gear progression is good?
It's
You're
great.
happy with it?
It's actually the most fun gear progression I think I've played in any game. People are complaining because they're like, oh, I'm in Act 3 and I'm still wearing like 4 magic items. What's the point of having magic items if you don't have to wear them for a while?
Oh, that is one I 100% agree with. When people were telling me I'm in Act 3 and I'm still using magic items, like, that's a good sign. That means that magic items have a place in the game if they're still usable in Act 3, right?
If
and
I
that's
could
so
get
far
all
away
rare
from that.
items by the time I'm like halfway through Act 2, there'd be no point in magic items existing. It'd be an entire waste of time. Like,
I get what you're saying.
One thing I will add to this.
You first, yeah.
The one thing I will add to this is it's true that you will have like worse gear progression early game, but also you don't need as good gear as you're expecting. Like you're used to, oh, I have my resist capped by like Act 10 or something. I'm currently having absolutely no issues with survivability with 17 cold res, 21 lightning res. I had elemental weakness on that map and I didn't die.
It's because you're killing everything before it hits you.
Yeah.
I was taking a lot of hits that map. I was not playing optimally.
just making sure.
I think that your opinion, Balor, on this is correct. However, huge caveat, it comes from the perspective of somebody playing a build where everything's going correctly by your own admission. And if you said you look around and you're on top of the world, which means the rest of the world is not. So when they're playing the game, they're having a much worse time. And the easiest target to blame for that is the fact that they're wearing shit gear compared to if they're playing PoE 1. Now, I don't I'm also wearing predominantly magic gear, and I've had no problem progressing through the game. So it's not a problem. Like, and my build is not good. I am not clearing bosses in 30 seconds. It's clearing bosses in 5 to 10 minutes on act bosses easily. So it's like, it's fine, but it's just definitely, I could see the friction causing problems to people. I think this is like, if you just, my bigger gripe with the gearing situation is I don't think this game really has crafting at the moment. It has loose item creation, and it doesn't have like, the fact there's no I think adding alterations would help tremendously, because the situation that I've experienced again was like if I want to get a better flask, my options are finding more white flasks and then transmuting them. That's it.
Isn't that what you do in PoE 1 anyway? Because you want to save your
I hoard all my
alterations?
alts for my flasks.
You could use alterations. You could use vendor recipes. There's other recourses. You can't do that here.
Yeah, and charms especially. I found one. I need a stun charm. It's what gets me killed all the time. I got one stun charm as a quest reward at level 20, and I've never gotten another one. And like the flasks having passive charge generation as a suffix, you basically need that suffix. And so you need to be picking up white flasks and transmuting them until you get that suffix. Charms are so rare that I haven't found a single other stun charm, much less enough of them to be able to roll the suffix that I want.
So the fix for this is twofold. You could, if you introduced an avenue for either an alteration or a scour would work in the same way. You could limit it to flasks or charms. That's fine. But there's just, it's the same thing with like describing Jousis being as fast as his character is. I didn't find movement speed boots until the end of Act 3. And I've been transing and auging movement speed boots this entire time.
I find that hard to believe.
The same way I find you not finding Exalted's hard to believe. I found 7 of them. But they're useless if I don't have Regals. So it's like, there's a lot of like little pitfalls that you can get stuck in that definitely exacerbate the gearing problem. And it seems like there's little recourse for a lot of them. Now, that friction is digestible for people who can, by your own admission, play 24 hours on launch day and 18 hours the next. But that could be the entire month's playtime for somebody. In which case, it's just get fucked, basically. So that's where it's like harder, I would say, for a lot of people who this is their first ARPG, let alone first look at Path of Exile.
So there is actually one thing, now that you're mentioning it like that I would kind of like to see changed. Some people from my chat got out of Act 1 and were like, yeah, I've got like 4 Regals and 8 Exalts. I'm like, oh, you're able to craft stuff. I was in Act 3 with like 2 Exalts and 1 Regal at the end of Act 3, and I was like, well, I can't craft anything.
Wait.
I've nothing.
But you blasted through it, right? So you didn't like repeatedly farm zones and stuff.
No, I didn't stop at farm zones, but I had nothing. And one of the things they did say in their like interview was like, if you can't craft during the campaign, we've failed. Well, some people could, some people can't. And so I would say that is failed. The problem is some people were getting a decent amount of them. So like if you turn them all up, then like there'll be people getting like a lot of it. So I'm thinking like something along the lines of like maybe
Quest
they need
rewards.
to be like guaranteed ones during
Yeah.
the campaign somewhere
That's
where
the
you
solve.
just like
I mean, honestly,
here's
like
some
the quest
regals
reward.
and 4
Yeah.
exalts
The
during
axe
this
boss
area.
loot, I think, is a good barometer of like the final axe boss could easily drop 2 exalts or 2 regals of each of the acts, and it wouldn't be an offensive amount that you would somehow like for a first kill. It wouldn't be like, it would just be like, oh, this, I feel like I've really worked for this kill and I've gotten something as a byproduct. But then to that point though, if if you're not familiar with the game or the genre, I think it's quite easy to squander that currency, and then now you're just up the river with no paddle effectively if you can't naturally refarm it, because it feels like the refarmability, like I've had to farm zones extensively, and it's very common to farm a zone multiple times and not find a single rare relevant currency, and the diminishing returns on your experience is quite punishing to where you're not really getting too many levels, and there's no progression for your skill gems when refarming zones, so the natural power of your character doesn't really rise. Like that's a big portion of, I really hate people trying to equate this to like a Souls-like game, because as like I've played every Souls game for hundreds of hours,
like that.
not even remotely like it, because the concept of those games have a portion of, if you're stuck, you could go farm to make yourself stronger, and I think that part is really difficult at the moment in PoE2, because you've lost the biggest natural avenue for Path of Exile character progression if you chose, which is over farming your gems slightly. Like as a caster, getting a couple gem levels is a huge difference in your damage.
Yeah, but only as a caster or summoner. Like,
well, no, I would say
attackers,
as melee
do
post the
much.
past update, the past melee update did a huge pass on melee, where getting gem levels from melee is pretty substantial. The amount of flat they added.
Fair enough.
So I would say, like, if I'm having a hard time and I'm playing a fireball or an arc or whatever, I can't just go get 2 more levels of arc. I'm at whatever the cap I'm at for that area now, for the most part. Especially because supports, like the tier 2 supports, don't drop for basically the entire first playthrough. You get some at the very end of Act 3, but they're not happening for the most of it. So it's a little bit limiting, where I could see the feeling of like, I don't know how to make my character notably stronger at this point, and I'm just kind of throwing myself at a boss, and that could be like a pretty grating experience.
Yeah, I feel like that's exactly also what I wanted to say in response to Bello, just real quick. Because if you're having a good run or an average run, it feels good. But if you're having a bad run or you're unlucky in a certain department, it doesn't feel like there's anything that you can do to work towards
no, like
making
natural
it better.
recourse, I guess.
Yeah. I had the same feeling, like I said, towards the end of Act 1 when I wanted to get the better bow. The bow wouldn't drop, and I didn't have currency to craft a bow. And I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do? I'm just going to go into the boss like that. Like, I can't overfarm more than 2 levels.
Like rares to disenchant for 1/10 of a regal could take you like over an hour or 2 to get 10 rares with gold and stuff.
I feel like it should give you alch shards or something.
Yeah, alchs I've only found 1.
I've found 5 alchs
insanely
in
rare,
total.
Yeah. Oh, chance orbs also 0. I mean, I
found 1 chance.
Yeah,
at towards the end of the campaign.
3/10 a chance.
3/10 a chance. That's the Path of Exile 2. 3/10 a chance.
I will unhelpfully share my anecdote of the item I just crafted. So I'm in the area where you can start doing maps. I went to the shop. I browsed the shop. I found they're selling a pair of blue gloves that have 131 life and 34 fire res on them. So I'm like, great. I buy it. Right. I have from the boss and the rest of the act, I have exactly 1 regal and 3 exalts.
How much gold did it cost, by the way?
And I exalt it 3 times. And I get 31 lightning res, 53 life on kill, 9 to 8 fire damage to attacks, and some armor and evasion rating. So I've used all of my currency and gotten lucky and gotten 1 good piece of gear.
But if you used all of that on a weapon and then it just was whiff after whiff, I think like trying to refarm that amount of currency, maybe at your stage of the game it's possible, but like a little bit, if you were stuck, say, at the end of Act 3.
Oh, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with what you've been saying for the last 10 minutes. I'm just sharing my stupid anecdote.
Yeah. Oh, it happens, yeah.
So something slightly important, as with all of the Path of Exile 1 as well, the whole thing's balanced around trade. Whether it's balanced or not is a different question. This is early. Yep. But regardless, trade works. So people need to like have some tabs with shit in it you're not using. Sell stuff for exalts and regals. I'm I'm currently right now have been selling something about every 15 minutes out of a dump tab. Somebody comes and gives me a Regal or an Exalt or
Trade works in
Two
Cruel, right?
Chaos
Not
or
before that for the currency system.
for the Faustus system, that's Cruel. But
Yeah.
public trade just with your stash tabs works from the beginning.
It's just a real question though. Is there anywhere in game that remotely references that?
No.
You can
Yeah, so-
technically making your stash tab public slightly would give you a hint, but other than that, no.
Yeah, so
That is
that's kind of a
good
that's a good point. So I
Point,
think-
but at least for us, we should be doing it.
well, we
I
don't
mean,
need the help.
Lighty,
That's my
but-
we don't need the help. I'm saying for someone that's like, they might be looking at a notice board in Act 3, which for context for reference. It's like that's sort of like how would they know to even do that? We're like earlier, I was touting the tutorial and all the videos, which I think is a band-aid of the situation. It's like PoE now has a trade website. There should have been even like a loading screen menu saying, if you're feel free to check out Path of Exile trade like something like there should be something like, because otherwise that system doesn't work.
Just because it's been mentioned and people have asked in my chat a lot, the Path of Exile 2 trade website is pathofexile.com/trade2 for some reason.
Oh my god. They even have a pathofexile2.com. So why is it on pathofexile2.com/trade? I also
I
logged
thought it
in
would be
on the
the
Path
same
of Exile.
trade website and I would just drop down to change, but it's not. It's /trade.
That is also a valid
Yeah,
solution. That was my first thought how it would work when I found out there was no trade on PoE2.
I have no problem with there being like third-party systems as far as ones that are officiated by the game company, like as GGG.
like the
this
trade
is their
website.
website. However, if there's no reference to it in game, and you don't get Faustus till Cruel, what do you do? How would you know to trade, and if so, where? Like,
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. Is like brand new play. This is your first ARPG or your first time playing PoE. You probably don't know. Even if you buy tabs, you
for this game to really work, as far as I think, like from what it's designed to do, it needs to kind of really cater to a lot of more casual people who are seeing it, because it's the biggest fucking game in the world right now, like advertising wise. It's got mass amounts of eyes looking at it, and if like that's a part that isn't easy to navigate or even have any reference to, you're gonna lose some people maybe over that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
So just play solo self-found, just play solo self-found.
I mean, that's what everyone is doing. Kind of. I have a long list of other complaints, but I don't want to complain all the time.
I have no complaints. Not none.
Well, I mean,
like,
all of them are
really
minor
low.
and petty, right? They're like basically I should write a report and send it to GGG, and it's like these things would be
I did
cool
that.
if it
I did that,
fixed.
Cat.
I've
did
so
exactly
little. Anything I have to complain about feels so goddamn minor compared to the like masterpiece I'm playing right now. I don't know how I go back to PoE 1.
Well, with your lust for power and currency accumulation and total destruction.
But like, this is so much better.
I know. I'm glad you're enjoying it, right? Yeah, I mean, let's state the obvious because we haven't said it yet. The game looks amazing. It's like really the visual.
Yep, looks great. Looks great. Sounds great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The cinematic is great. The
which
little
cinematic?
cinematics in between the acts, like the start
I
cinematic.
I
the
actually
intro.
hard disagree, because after seeing the reveal trailer where they had a proper like
a
Blizzard
full,
quality
like, millions
cinematic
of dollars cinematic
Yep.
trailer.
and then to see,
But that's
what
in the
was-
game as well, right?
No, I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it.
Nope, I don't think it's in the game at all.
Isn't that
You'd
shown
you'd think-
before you start?
Yeah, I made a new
then I'm dumb.
character.
Maybe then I just played it on
I've
stream
freshly
while
installed
waiting in
3
queue.
times in the past 2 days.
Yeah,
I would have seen
fair
it
enough.
if it happened. I mean, they could just tack it on. I think they should, especially in Act
totally.
1 where that plot line is relevant, because that's the setup for the beginning of Act 1.
Certainly
And,
on full release, right?
oh,
when
yeah.
this is
There's
all
no
for
way
show.
they don't use it. That's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like I was expecting something. After seeing that, I was like, oh, finally we're getting like, blow Blizzard out of the water with the quality of your game. Now we're going to see like this part of it that clearly they know who to, they made something of similar quality. And I was
Maybe
like,
the
I
one
can't
that
wait
we're
to see.
seeing in the game, maybe the one that we're seeing right now is like the storyboard, because it looks like a storyboard of the.
Well,
final...
that's it looks like I'm watching a mobile game cutscene for a fucking storyboard, where it's like looks really.
See, I thought it was great.
It's great for PoE 1 because you have
like
4
the
seconds
style.
of Kitava doing nothing. That's the equivalent. But if you're comparing it to other ARPGs, they have like there's real cutscenes in those games, and that I would have if I wasn't shown the thing at the reveal that they made something really cool, I wouldn't have an expectation for there to be anything. But they showed that, and it wasn't even in game. And I was like, oh, okay. Well,
didn't Chris say something like, "Why would I spend $5 million on a cinematic or something when I could make a new league for that much, or like a new act?"
Yeah.
Now that we
there's
have
only
one,
so many leagues that you can
the
release.
box is opened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. There should be more than that one cinematic that I just learned isn't even in game, and that should definitely be in game because I think it's crucial to understanding the end of Act 1 when when you fight the Count,
the
and the Countess takes off with the Beast when spoilers when you beat the Count. So yeah.
Well, they have the guy pinned to the tree, like the
hooded one,
the Wanderer. Yeah, the hooded one. I don't want to say who he actually is, but you when you first meet him, you're like, why is he pinned to? I have no context for why he's pinned to a fucking tree in a swamp because it's in the cutscene, and it's.
I had no idea when we were at the playtest in June, right when we played on console, Balor and I was like, what is this is hopefully explained. I mean, I didn't say that, but I was like, this is confusing. I can't get the lore, but we also skipped all the dialogue, so makes sense. But the hooded one.
Did I just watch it on stream too many times?
Possibly
the cinematic,
because I swore I saw the cinematic in the client, but maybe
that's what I also think.
I freshly installed literally before stream today twice, and it was like there's nothing plays. I just sat there and looked at it like it was just going, and nothing plays. There's nothing.
Which was probably because
so it's like
I'm sure I saw it in my console.
We were waiting for the servers to come up for so long. We probably watched it many times during that time.
It plays when you open the game for the first time ever.
But not if you reinstall it.
Yeah, apparently if you reinstall it. I mean, I've like repaired and fresh installed twice on stream.
Have you deleted your My Games Path of Exile folder with the production config and all?
Yep, didn't play.
Maybe there's a Windows registry entry that
it didn't play for me at any point.
No, that's
No, I think Balor and I are making it up. It's not on the client. But yeah, people in chat say that plays though. Well, anyway,
yeah, I'm sure it played somewhere, but
anyway, we're on the point of praise. So I think it's awesome that there's no teleport scrolls in the game anymore. Like one more slot that I can actually use in the inventory that's not reserved for like some random currency that really is trivial essentially, right? So
next stage, get rid of wisdoms.
Well, they did get rid of wisdoms. You only need them on the go, but you have the hooded one always to identify.
But you don't need them. I don't want to get rid of identifying. Right? I still want them to be unidentified on the floor, and I still want to have to click to identify them. But that doesn't have to be a physical item. We're getting so many of them. The hooded one identifies everything. They're an irrelevant currency. It doesn't need to be taking up an inventory slot by.
To Balor's point, there's no reason why, if you could even keep the amount of inputs per identification by just having right-click identify rares and uniques.
Yeah, or you could have like an identify thing, like above my inventory, have like the image of an identification scroll there. I'll still click it. I'm not worried about like the interact. It just doesn't need to be an item. It doesn't give anything. It doesn't mean anything.
And then just every time you use it, it automatically deducts 25 gold from your account.
That's fine.
It doesn't need to do anything. Yeah, sure.
5 gold. Yeah.
Whatever.
I was just testing the waters, how you feel about it. Okay, no, that's great. But yeah, I really like that essentially ID scrolls are optional in the game as well, and you don't need them past Act 1 when you get the hooded one in every town.
How many people do you think don't realize that?
A lot.
That shit's a lot. Anyone who plays Diablo 2 probably realizes it because it's just Deckard Cain, but
you do still get enough wisdom scrolls if you don't use that feature. I would know because I wanted to identify everything as soon as I picked it up.
Yeah.
So I was just impatient.
Yeah, sometimes it really is helpful to identify things on the go, even if it's just not impatience, but like I often drop blue flasks and I'm like, oh, that might be better than my actual flask, right? Better mod, instant recovery or something. And you don't really want to go back every time that happens. You got
Do you
more
think,
praise, guys? Anything you
the
want to point out?
The portal, it doesn't naturally bind to the same button in PoE2, right? You have to physically click it. Is there a way to bind it?
Yeah,
you
there's
can go into
control
hotkeys
bindings.
and bind it.
Three things are unbound by default: the portal button, End Delirium, and some other thing.
Portal seems like a weird one to have.
I couldn't
not bound
find a
by
good
default.
button for portal. I bound it to 4 because there's not a flask there anymore, and 4 for Fortal.
Ah,
And then I never pressed it, and I always click the button anyway.
I bound it to T for teleport.
yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Isn't it the same
T
as
is one of my
skill
skill binds by default. It's so hard to
Yeah.
press T as a skill in
Where is?
WASD.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah,
Create portal.
It's T is too far away from WASD, so I was never going to use that as a skill
that's a
bind.
good question. Is everyone using WASD controller?
The crossbow
Yes.
guys, for sure.
I would use
Okay.
controller if I was not using a skill that wants me to target the ground.
Got it.
I would use controller if I could hot swap controls, which I know is coming. But like, what I want is for my UI to not change, and for me to be in town with a mouse and keyboard, doing whatever I want, crafting, whatever, and then just pick up a controller, and none of the UI changes, and everything stays the same, and I just do combat with a controller, like I do in every other ARPG in existence.
I do want to do that as well.
Yeah.
So you're playing mouse and keyboard right now, Baylor?
Yep, with WASD.
Oh, okay. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I meant like for movement. I thought you were doing like mouse and keyboard for movement.
Mouse and keyboard for one hand on WASD for movement, one hand on the right stick of the controller.
Yeah.
No, it's WA. I'm using the WASD movement, but that is mouse and keyboard still. It's just I'm not click to move.
Sure. I guess.
I don't know
if I poll
ever go
people, I
back
would
to click
definitely
to move.
Yeah. I have been using WASD, and I definitely don't mind it, but I also if it just didn't, there's no reason it shouldn't exist in both games. Full stop. I don't see why. Like, I'm sure another game is not balanced for it, and I don't even you could probably just retrofit it, but I feel like it's definitely like.
Well,
to not have
PoE1
it
has
as current-
controller support. You can't move while shooting, but controller support is essentially the same as WASD, right?
Here's the cool thing though. Before, and I'm going to put this out there because I know I've said it on stream a lot. Before it started, I was saying it's cool that WASD is here. I'm probably never going to use it. That's awkward. I'm not going to like it. A maximum of 8 directional movement. Like, I'm just like, this is regression. It's like back. We used to do WASD 20 years ago, and then people got click to move. That was the advance. Like, I'm not going to use it. And then I was like, a quarter of the way through Act 1, and I was like, I'll try WASD for a little while, and we'll just see how it feels because it's new. And then by the end of Act 1, I'm like, nope, I guess I'm a WASD player now. I never want to click the move again.
I was in the same boat, the identical boat, I'd say. But I'm less of a convert, and it feels way more build dependent. So playing the mercenary guy, WASD felt non-negotiable. Playing the summoner person, it feels like it doesn't fucking matter either way. But playing the melee, it felt worse using WASD.
Oh yeah, wow, that aligns completely with what I felt. Except I felt with summoner also.
But that could also just be because melee feels shit in RPGs. That's also possible. But to the point, like it definitely, it should be an option. I don't know why it's not an option. My biggest gripe with WASD is a visual one. I don't like seeing my character crab walking around, looking one direction, moving another. It like kind of just looks strange to me, where it's like because of where your mouse is positioned, I'm just like you're constantly moving in a direction that you might not be facing, so it just looks weird. That's like just awkward looking, but that's the only real gripe, if anything. It just looks like I've never seen my character move in this orientation. You know, we're not used to always like facing or moving or what have you with mouse like clicking.
Yep.
All right. A somewhat adjacent topic to this is... I wonder whether I should bring up the topic first or... first express the sentiment. So one of the sentiments I've seen about WASD is someone felt that they don't have as good control over their character with WASD as they have with mouse, because with WASD you could steer your character in only 8 directions: up, down, left, right, and any combination of 2 adjacents of one. So only 8 directions. But with mouse and keyboard you can move like at uneven angles, right? So that is a big advantage when you're trying to not get creep blocked, and that's a big gripe that a lot of people have with the game right now. You get blocked a lot, like locked into place by monsters that surround you, and you can't move them out of the way. Originally it was talked about, I'm pretty sure I remember, they said that there is going to be a weighting system where like small monsters have a small weight, medium monsters a medium, big monsters are heavy, and bosses are so heavy that you can't move them out of the way, but if you're trying to walk through them, that you can move them out of the way a little bit, push them to the side, and that is just not in the game at all. You can't move anything out of the way, but the monsters can push you, which is like, in some zones it's really upsetting. There's this underground zone where you're looking for the essence of water in Act 2, and there's crossings in these narrow hallways where all of a sudden you get surrounded by like 20, 30 little bugs, and they look small enough that you could push them out of the way, but actually what happens, they push you out of the way and push you in the wall or like surround you and you can't get out, and it's really frustrating. In general, I like the shift to your positioning mattering more and the ability like for you to get locked, but it happens far too often and there's nothing really that you can do against it in some situations. The biggest culprit being the zone that I just mentioned, and most notably the Dreadnought in the end of Act 2, where there's tiny little bridges between the wagons and you have monsters that leap at you from off screen and in front of you, behind you, next to you, and all of a sudden you can't move anymore. And all you can do is watch your character die or press escape, respawn at checkpoint.
I do feel like the body blocking is very prevalent, and I wouldn't mind it if there was a recourse, but it does feel like there's limited to no recourse because there's no real movement skills for a lot of classes. So I mean, I like on the summoner I'm playing, if I were to be body blocked, I would probably just hold spacebar until my minions come back because there's nothing I could do. Like I can't blink away. I mean, having it so like your dodge roll pushes things or phases you would solve this, but
that's a good question I also wanted to ask is, would anyone be in favor of phasing on dodge roll? Because I wouldn't want that. I think that would trivialize the entire thing that we're talking about.
I was in Act 1 or starting, I thought, man, we need phasing on dodge roll. The longer I played, I was like, actually, this is another thing I changed my opinion on in the last 2 days. I've been preaching, yo, phasing is the best thing in the world. You absolutely have to have phasing. This is the thing I'm worried about. I can't believe we're not going to have phasing. And now I'm like, it feels so much more real without phasing. I just think we need a higher pushiness level ourselves. I think that's what they called it, was like things would have like pushiness levels compared to us, and I think ours is just a little bit too low. It makes sense for me to get completely bloody blocked into a corner by giant apes,
a crab,
and that's
one
my
little
fault.
crab.
I shouldn't have been there. but the 6 little tiny crabs that are like that don't even come up to like my ankles, they shouldn't be able to body block me. I should be able to roll through those, and I can't.
Roll through those? You should be able to walk over those. Just take a big step and you're on the other side.
Squish them like the mantises in Fallout.
Like, I think that's just like I don't know how it works, obviously, but like they were talking about pushiness levels, and whatever our pushiness level is, just move that up a little bit.
I found there were a couple clips on my stream where I was being pushed by something. So there were 2 crabs clipped into my hitbox, pushing me to the side, and I held the button to keep going in that direction, and they went with me. So I was being forcibly pushed at double speed all the way across the map until I hit a wall. And it looked really funny.
Yeah, I think like it's definitely, there's a lot of friction with that, not with us being just pushed around by ants, you know, and it's obviously most prevalent at lower levels when you have less tools to defend yourself. So I think if you could just push spacebar to shove most things out of the way, or you're just bigger naturally and it's not an issue, that would probably naturally resolve it. That's just if there's just like a number they slide, like make us fatter, that's fine.
That's what I think it is. At least that's the understanding I had. Is you just need to like slide out, pushing us up,
Could be
give me
solved.
more weight.
Much like the current situation, we identified that it doesn't feel good. So if they up the number, maybe it'll just feel good.
Yeah.
Maybe. Another adjacent topic to that, and I'm wondering whether I need critical feedback because I'm wondering whether my take is cooked and I just need to get used to the game and get good, or whether you feel the same. Is with a lot of areas and
Yes.
tile sets, it feels incredibly hard for me to tell where I can walk and where I cannot walk. Like sometimes I'll try to walk between two trees in the jungle, and the trees are
Yeah.
just too close to each other to walk through, and you're getting blocked, and you can't roll between. But visually, you should be able to walk between the two trees and take a step over the roots that are like Balor's scarabs or things, beetles are not higher than your ankles, but you can't, and then you get stuck because you
That
have
only
monsters
happened to
behind
me
you.
in a Sanctum. There were mobs that hadn't spawned yet, or that hadn't stood up from their pre-spawn position yet, and their hitbox was bigger than their model suggested. So I was like, I should be able to squeeze through this gap and get away from this flamethrower. But because there was this big mob sitting there on the ground that hadn't spawned yet, I couldn't get through that little gap.
Yeah, it definitely happens. Like there's a lot of spots that you just get you should be able to squeeze through. You can't. They could just throw extra trees there and stuff. They just make it so it doesn't look like that. If you open up your map, it typically shows if there's a connection, then you can't bypass it. But not everyone plays with like their tabbed map open. But if you do it
Yeah.
normally, that normally is like 1-to-1 what is possible. But visually, no, it's exacerbated because of enemies with their extra large boxes, and us, like our characters, extra fat, and they just get, like you said, on the Sanctum or whatever, you just get stuck on everything.
Yeah, no, that's good to hear because I was not sure whether
You'll
I was
feel
overly
validated. You are
critical
correct.
and just not used to the tile sets, because I also in the desert sometimes there's like rubble or stones where you're like, this doesn't look like I can't walk there, but I can't walk there.
If it's not relevant though in whatever mapping tile sets, it won't really matter eventually. But if it's if this is the thing that is most obvious in Act 2, where it seems to be clusterfucked more than any other act as far as like tight corridors and stuff, that's kind of what they can make it better. But
yeah, I wanted to mention real quick, I do play with the map directly over the center of the screen with all of the terrain transparency all the way up, so it you only see the outlines of where you're able to walk.
That helps.
The issue with that is the maps, the instances in PoE2 are so big that when you full clear the map, that overlay is covering the majority of the screen, and it sort of gets in the way during the boss fight at the end.
Well, you can switch it off, right?
Yeah, I can switch it off, but like the fact that I have to do that, I'm looking at it, I'm like, this map is enormous.
Could you just zoom it in so that it's like bigger and therefore less dense and like covering less of your screen
I feel like
area?
that actually makes it worse.
Okay, well, that just looks like a jumble of lines is the problem, because if you can't, you need like has to be far enough out that you could read it, like the legibility becomes an issue that you're too zoomed in.
Like I'm in the campaign, because I didn't know where I was going and I was looking for stuff, I fully cleared basically every zone multiple times. And so when you do that, it's like, okay, I need to find the one bit of the outskirts of the instance that I did not explore for an extra 2 feet to find the waypoint. And so the instances are so big that I have to have like the whole map visible at the same time. So right now I've just full cleared the whole map, except it says map complete, but I didn't even see the map boss that I killed. There's that one little bit right there that is the part of the map that I haven't cleared yet. So if the map boss was over there,
do you
I'd
mind
have to backtrack 60% of the map just to get to this part?
The maps are like substantially larger than PoE1. Do you
in
you guys
the
mind
campaign?
that?
Yes.
Is that like do you feel like it's positive or negative for your experience?
Coupled with the fact that your movement speed is generally expected to be slower, this is what contributes the most to the amount of time that it takes to clear the campaign. Let me do my /played. I just got to maps like when we started. I have 30.5 hours played. Now, granted, some of that is AFK, but I went at a reasonably slow pace. Like I was trying different skills. I tried Sanctum and died a few times. I, was having fun, not trying to rush everything as fast as possible. 30 hours is a long time.
And you think
Especially for
if you
someone
had
that
like
I
20 to
picked a
30 more
good
movement
build.
speed, do you think that would just fix not fix, but do you think that would alleviate the size of the campaign, or just having more knowledge on your second character, maybe bypassing some stuff? Like how much do you expect to reasonably shave off that time?
How much
on
do I
on
expect to
another
shave
playthrough?
off? There were some instances where it does not matter your prior knowledge of the instance. It is a labyrinth and shaped roughly similar, and you have to go to all four corners of it anyway. There are some zones like that. I don't think there are any zones like Act 10, the final zone in Act 10 in PoE 1. Everything is in the same location, and I have my route planned out for I go get this waypoint, I go into this area, get this waypoint, immediately leave, go to this area, get the waypoint to the previous waypoint, and then walk back. Like, I don't think there's any zones in the game in PoE 2 where I would do something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's legitimately like sometimes the exit can be in the top right corner, it can be in the bottom left corner. I think they did make it labyrinthine on purpose to extend the playtime, and I feel like a lot of people aren't going to appreciate that. I think it feels bad, but it's there for a reason. Like, I was at the recommended level for my zone or one or two above it the entire time because I was forced to full clear the zone most of the time.
Yeah.
So doesn't that mean that it's like appropriately sized?
Yes, it's appropriately sized, but it feels way too big.
I think, yeah. So I feel like it feels way too big also, and I also was about 2 levels over the zone, maybe 3 at times. But I think that the size of it is exacerbated by the fact that there's, from my perspective, really nothing going on in a lot of these zones. And I think that that's because there's no mechanics in the game yet. Like if every map or so length of the area, like a screen or so length of the area, there was an essence or like something equivocal to like an essence, a box, an exile, a shrine, a thing going on, that I feel like you would definitely break up the monotony of it. But I can clear, like I'm clearing the apex of filth at the end of the third thing, and every single section of the screen feels identical to every other 50 sections of the screen in this entire pyramid, because there's about 4 mob types and there's no variety of experience. So the fact it's so long, I think or the fact it's so large, I think is getting maybe a little out of proportion because of the monotony of that. But if there was like something to break it up, like my first playthrough, I'm looking around at like the cool statues and like all the visual shit. But future characters, I don't think I'd have that same reverence for my environment while I'm killing the same type of effects.
I feel like I'm exploring, and it's, I don't know, fantastic. I don't know how that's going to feel 20 characters in, but I don't know how any campaign is going to feel 20 hours in. The 20 characters in. The bigger thing that's making me question is like, oh, the zones are too big. Like, would you rather have like 4 times as many zones but have them be smaller? Like, was more load screens?
The thing that got me
isn't less load screens what we want?
The thing that got me was the amount of backtracking I had to do. Because if you have a map that's a giant circle and you start at the beginning, like a giant donut shape where there's nothing in the middle, you start at the beginning and you have to go all the way around the entire circle, except you missed like a tiny gap in the wall 60% of the way through the circle, and now you have to traverse 40% of the circle again to go back and go through that one. Like the zone designs are like that, where you have to you do a full circuit looking for the thing that you're trying to find, and you realize, oh, it was actually that tiny little alcove up there, and then I have to go all the way back.
So that sounds like less of a this zone is too large and more of a there wasn't an obvious indicator of the direction I was supposed to be in.
Yes. But there are some zones where even if you know exactly where you're going to go, there's still a lot of backtracking.
I can get on board with that criticism. There's been a few zones where I had to backtrack too much. I'm okay with that. I definitely don't want smaller zones. I actually love it. I want less time.
I'm just identifying problems, not proposing solutions.
Like In theory, I'd almost be more happy clicking on an act and being like, all right, I have to wait like a minute for my load screen to finish. But then it's just loaded the entire act and every zone in. I'd love that more. Like I want to go through less load screens. I just want to be
one
The load
gigantic
screen and
zone.
opening the map is so annoying.
Yeah, speaking of load screens, pressing U when the world map to open has
I don't
the
know why
world's
that takes so
longest
long.
load screen.
Because
Yeah.
when we did the playtest, that was instant.
Yeah,
I think
I
they
don't
just
remember
don't
there
load
even
it when you
being
load
one
into
at
the zone.
playtest.
They don't
No,
load
because
it.
it happens multiple times in a row. Here, I just pressed it. It took a second or two. I close it.
I
I
just
press
chalk
it.
it up to
Okay, it
technical
did render
issues.
faster the second time.
Yeah,
I
if
just
you're
think
in
they
the
don't
same
cache
zone
it.
and you check it again, it's good. But the first time you check it every zone, it's I don't know what that is, but it was not like that at the playtest we ran.
I'm sure that'll be fixed with some patch or something, you know.
Yeah.
Anything technical, like kind of just again, I'm like pressing, throwing it under the rug. It's like sure it'll be fixed.
Anything that's like, oh, this is a little bit slow, or the UI, like one of the buttons,
Give
like
them
the
the benefit of the
button to
doubt.
message someone, the hitbox does not match up with the button. You have to click like
I
the
noticed
bottom of
that.
it. Like stuff like that early access, whatever. Some UI designer will fix it. But we're trying to identify issues that are like, okay, we actually need to like, get someone on this. This might be a big problem in the game's full release.
Okay, I
That is
got
more
a
serious
related.
than like a UI thing.
I got a somewhat related anecdote. You remember when I just talked about the zone where the 20, 30 small beetles swarmed you, right? And my quest tracker told me that I need to find the essence of water in that zone. So I full cleared the zone and I hadn't found the essence of water. So I ran around the entire zone again and I couldn't find it. It must be some narrow thing, like kind of some lab thing, right? Like, where you press like a hidden button and it opens and it's not shown on the overlay. And I looked again and I couldn't find anything.
Giving it
And
too much
by
credit.
that time, I had passed the exit from the zone 3 times,
Yep.
And it didn't cross my mind to leave the zone through that exit because that exit had a name on it that was a different name than the name of the zone that I was in, that the quest tracker told me to find the quest item in. But it turns
That
out
happened to me
that
twice.
that was a subzone, and it was exactly the same zone because there was no load screen, and so that was where the quest item was.
had
But
a
the
few of
zone
those, yeah.
transitions don't indicate clearly whether it is a new zone with a load screen or it is a subzone. It just says a name, and there needs to be some sort of indicator as to whether the door leads you into a load screen or not.
Would be nice.
It goes back to like older game design, old game like Metroid and stuff, where there is basically no objective tracking. Like maybe an NPC told you one vague sentence, like this is what you're supposed to go do, and then you had to go figure it out. And there's no indicator like Skyrim compass, like where is the objective? And the point of this was to extend how long it took to beat the game, because a lot of these games back in the day, there wasn't a whole lot of memory on cartridges. If you knew exactly what you were doing, you could speedrun the game in 2 hours, and then that's not what they wanted, right? And I feel like some of that design philosophy has leaked into Path of Exile 2, where it's like, oh, we want the campaign to last a certain amount of time. Let's make it take longer because the objective tracker doesn't tell you the exact pixel to go to on the map. But what you outlined, where it's like, oh, go to this zone, and you're in the zone, and where you're supposed to go is actually a differently named zone within that zone. Like, that's just confusing. Like that's
Yeah.
not
There's some
not
clarity
showing
issues
you
with
where
the
to go.
quest for sure.
That's lying to you.
Yeah, there's so not to your point, but like when you open up the map over, like pushing the U to see the quest map page, I like that better than the PoE1 version of that. Like this feels definitely more interactive as far as I am looking to maybe enter a new zone and be like, oh, there's in this zone there is at least a chest and then some sort of event. So I'm going to go look for those things before I move on to the next zone.
Yep.
That seems great. My gripe is with that is it the visual clarity for when I've completed a thing, like the grayed out, for some of them is like really not the most obvious. And some
It
of them
looks
just like
something that I
seem-
haven't done yet.
Yes. Yeah. I would like maybe like a little check or like a little, maybe like an extra or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I've literally cleared a zone 3 times looking for something that I've already done, and vice versa, where I've moved past something because it's like,
Okay.
The icon for like a loot bag is like grayish tan, and when it's completed, it's like just gray, but it looked very similar. I was like, I ran a zone 3 times looking for something I've already done. So
Yeah, that didn't happen to me, that I searched for things that I already had done, but I did point that out as well, looking at the map, that it's odd that the waypoints that aren't activated are dull or like grayish, and when they're activated they glow blue, but then the skulls for the side bosses, they're brighter when you haven't done the boss, but when you have done the boss, then it's grayed out, and it's like that's
I'd like
just visually inconsistent.
Just like a really, really bright color, or just like some contrast there would be nice. Especially after like a 15-hour session when I'm just like my eyes are glazed over. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm doing.
Right. No, I just quickly also wanted to add, because we were talking about zones being too long, and I have to say I only felt that way in a negative way. I mean, zones are long, and that's good, but I only felt about that negatively in 3 zones, and that was the one that I just talked about. And then there was another one that was the Dreadnought in the end of Act 2, where it was really unpleasant, and I was so happy when I got through it, and then you get to the front of the Dreadnought, which is exactly the same tile set and exactly the same gameplay, just another zone that is extremely long.
It's reminiscent of the feeding trough before Katava, where it's basically the same zone twice.
At least the lighting changes.
Yeah.
Well, I want to say one thing about the Dreadnought. I was talking earlier about how grenades can bounce off a platform and like fall to the ground below and not be able to hit anything. The Dreadnought, for whatever reason, the gaps in between the parts of the Dreadnought, there's an invisible floor there where the grenades can land. So the grenades do work on that zone.
I didn't pay attention to it, even though I play a lot of grenades, but like now that you pointed out, I'll look next time. Because I didn't notice them falling off and not hurting the enemies. But I hadn't thought about it at the time. There was enough other things to critically think about.
Totally tangentially, but it occurred while I'm playing, so I figured I'd mention it. We could pause the game now, which is, amazing. 10 years too late. God bless, we could have it, the thing I've been using pausing the most for is not when my wife yells at me. It's not when I'm going to take a piss. It's reading debuffs. Because previously, if you had a debuff on you that was lethal and it wasn't around for a long time, if I try to read it, I'm probably dying to it. Most notably,
it only lasts like 2 seconds.
Yeah, so King of the Mist especially, where I know he garbles something at you that said keep moving or don't move, but it's like not the most legible. And then by the time I sit there and read it, I've already fucked up. So right now I'm in the end of Act 3 and I see a debuff call. I'm on fire for some reason, and I see I have a debuff, so I can just pause the game and read it. And that feels great because now I know what's going on. Because before this, I wouldn't want to sit in this debuff and then just die to attempt or take a screenshot really quickly, So this is like, the fact we could pause the game is really, really nice. And just like the reading the debuffs is also great.
Good point.
I had this earlier.
Yeah.
I was doing an ultimatum, and one of the things that you have to do in one of the ultimatums is, pick up this core, walk it back to the thing, and put it in the machine. When you do that, it puts a debuff on you that gives you escalating damage taken.
Oh, yeah.
And I did not notice until I was like taking huge chunks of damage, and then I like paused and looked at it like,
I was
oh my
at
God.
100 stacks for about 2 minutes, and my chat's yelling at me like, drop the fucking core off. And I'm trying to figure like, what am I supposed to do here? Because the deposit isn't nowhere near like really where you pick them up.
And then putting it down has an animation that takes like 10 seconds, and you can get hit during it.
You don't have iframes during the animation.
I got stunned out of it, and it disappeared the core, and I had to go grab it again.
Yep. Very funny. But you could just pause the game and read it. Now. Yeah, that's great.
That's amazing. Does that also work for enemy debuffs? Like when you hover over an enemy, you get the bar and the enemy symbols underneath. Can you pause and then cover those symbols?
It doesn't work when you're paused.
Yeah, when you're paused, you can't view, like the enemies totally disappears their bar.
Oh, damn. Yeah, see, that's my, I don't want to say complaint again, because honestly, I find the pause feature is really great, but Yeah, I think that's
Baby
a
steps,
little
you know?
bit missed
Baby
out
steps.
potential, that there's so few things that you can actually do while you press pause. Because when I first got into the game, I pressed pause and I went into the options in order to change something, and the game depaused while I was trying to change the graphic
Yeah,
settings.
the options menu does not pause.
Mhm.
It's very sad.
That's yeah. I don't understand.
I mean, I
But-
understand where they're coming from with not wanting players to pause in the middle of the boss fight to swap their skill gems, stuff like that. Sure,
I
don't
think that
allow me
does
to do
work.
that, but oh, you can?
Okay, not in the gem
Uh,
menu, like the cutting gem menu pauses. The swapping your gems out menu
Yeah,
does
no.
not pause.
Wait, is there a separate pause button from escape?
So passive tree pauses the game.
Right.
Certain things in inventory management pause the game.
Okay, I have not noticed that. But yeah, like
I just
honestly,
ran into
wherever
that a
it's-
second ago. I was looting stuff off the ground and doing stuff in my inventory, and then I went to click portal to town because I was at the end of the map, and it said you can't create portal while you're paused. I was like, what?
Yep.
I can see my character. I've clearly not paused, but I was paused.
I've not seen that message. I've seen the message you can't create a portal while
TLDR
you're fighting a
pause is
boss.
good.
When I was like in front of a boss and I had not known, I didn't know there was a boss area there.
Oh, you can't
right?
portal
Because
out even if you go
Yeah,
through the
it's in
lengthy
the hub.
animation.
Yeah. There's a couple places where like you're in the boss area but not actually fighting the boss. Then
Yeah.
you go to portal and it yells at you, and you're like, I didn't even know I was at a boss yet. And then you're like, okay, I guess I'm
pretty
at a boss
sure.
now.
So
Yeah.
in most cases, if you log out or disconnect and log back in, you will be standing exactly where you were in the same instance. It does that for you. In boss fights and stuff, it puts you outside the room. So if you're like, oh, I need to portal out of this boss fight, but I can't, I'm pretty sure you can log out and it just puts you out of the boss room. I mean, it resets the boss too, but
There was
if you're just like, I don't want to die.
Well, funny you should mention that. A couple of times I was just tactically killing myself in game to get back to checkpoints because there was no
I've done that
downside to
before.
it. Where it's like, I don't know where the fuck I am. How do I get back here? I'm just going to kill myself because it's just
the
it
pause
seems
menu does
easier.
not have return to previous checkpoint. It has exit and it has
To,
3 different exits.
Regarding that, I don't want to lead the conversation, but how do we feel about when you die? The boss is resetting, I feel like, is whatever, but these zones wiping, including everything on the ground.
Yeah,
How
this
do you
was
feel about
this was
that?
something that was present in the playtest. What they said
Like loot
when I asked them
despawning,
about it
everything. Like
was they wanted like important drops, like, oh, I killed in the campaign there are enemies that drop green quest items and stuff.
Yeah.
And you can die to a minion or something after you kill them. In the playtest that I was doing, when that happened, the green item on the ground respawned under your feet. I don't know if that's still true. That hasn't happened to me. But I feel like that philosophy didn't make it to production.
Yeah.
It's definitely a choice.
I did die to something as an exalt dropped, and it just despawned. And I didn't like that was a consequence of my own misplay that I understand. The weirder part about it is when you die and the whole zone resets, your map, like the fog of war of your map doesn't reset.
Yeah, because it's
Equivocal
the
to where
same
you
tile
are.
set. It's the same layout.
But then you like if everything's respawned, I have to re-clear the same areas I've already explored, right?
But at least you know where you can walk and where you can't.
Well, no, but the things are back. Everything's back though, and the areas have already cleared.
Everything's respawned. So it's like I can retrace my steps and re-kill everything, or it's like, oh, I know that when I went that way, that was the wrong way to go. So now I still have the layout, so I can go a different way.
That part's a little strange. That persists to me.
Not that this helps Lighty at all, but if you do happen to drop something like a divine or God forbid a mirror on the floor, and you die, you can just stay there and invite somebody to your party, and they can just port to you and come and pick it up. Wow. Old school delve rules. You can, if it's something important enough, invite somebody while you're dead on the floor and get them to come and save you.
Trade officially too OP. Have any of you guys been playing with other people?
Yes.
How has that been?
The whole of the first day, and the gameplay wise, fantastic. Way better party experience than really any ARPG. Like synergies and like being able to like have a person tank or being able to have things just not attacking you for a while. All great. Everything felt fantastic. Performance wise, all sorts of problems. loading zones as a party caused a bunch of crashes. We probably made half the progression we should have in the first day because of
that's technical stuff,
technical party issues. But like ignoring the technical issues, once that's sorted out, I could see myself actually playing in groups
now,
far more.
How many link skills did you run in this party setup?
0.
I was informed that you have to use link skills. Now, this was told to me by Chris Wilson. He's the CEO of Grinding Gear Games. I was told he's in charge of all the link skills. If I have to party, do I have to use link skills myself? Can I hire someone to link me to them? You know, what's like the linking like?
I actually haven't even looked at the link skills. I wonder if there are.
Did you not link you didn't hook your LinkedIn to Path of Exile? That's your problem. You got to get your LinkedIn hooked up, and then you all could link together like a big sausage chain.
Actually kind of want to look at the link skills, to be honest.
There's the notable that makes you link to a minion. You could link to a minion with a notable.
Link. All gems, no results.
Yeah, so if you need help finding it, you just have to, I think it's like the 34th listing. So you type R34 link and it should come up pretty instantly. You'll get all the information you need. Catmaster's viciously Googling on his phone right now.
Nope, he's just muted.
He's muted eating a banana. All right, that's good.
Fair enough.
Everything he does just is so German. You know what I'm saying? Eating the banana muted.
I had a really smart remark while you were saying something and I was muted. Since I got the banana, that's so unfortunate. But you said you didn't want to lead the conversation too much, and I appreciate that, but I was just going to direct it all back into the round and say, like, is there anything that we haven't talked about, that like a big topic that we should open before we
undoubtedly
round things off? Because we're probably like only doing another 10-20 minutes. But before we do that, I wanted to quickly talk about the third zone that frustrated me because it was too long, and that's not necessarily because the zone was so long, but that's in Act 3 when there's the big monkey that swings the column. I don't know whether you had the same problem, whether it's my bug, but I walked up there's a checkpoint, it activated visually, I thought at least, and then I died to the ape, and I respawned at the waypoint, which was on the other end of the zone. And then someone in chat said, oh, that happened to me as well. The first time I died to the monkey, the checkpoint didn't work. But then afterwards it worked. And I walked back and I died to the monkey again. And it still didn't work. And I ended up dying like 5 or 6 times more to the monkey. I at some point I gave up. I didn't even want to fight it, right? Like I tried once or twice to legit fight it. And I was like, no, I'll just come back later when I'm over leveled. I don't need that right now. It's side content, right? But then there's little space around it, and sometimes I needed to kite back because there were some threatening rares in the zone and stuff, and I accidentally activated the monkey again, and I spawned at the waypoint again, and I spent an hour or 2 in that zone. It was so awful. I was like, I just want to get out of the jungle. I just want to get out of it. Yeah, and then finally made it to the next zone. Same tile set.
You just got skill dipped by a chimp. Like, I don't think that's a game thing. I think you just got
Pro tip for fighting the monkey. I did this in one of the playtests. His hitbox, his collision box is absolutely massive, and there are big squares in that zone, like pyramids, and he will simply get stuck on a corner like you're playing RuneScape.
Yeah, right. I didn't legit try to fight him often.
His slams does not run away from through map geometry.
Not really like totally related, but just like a little nugget of praise, because I know they're kind of hard to get at me at times. But so when you're fighting the Chimera, I don't want to go into detail too much, but the fact that you could interact with the environment on that fight, if people, I don't want to like spoil too much, but you can interact with the environment in the fight in such a way that it stuns the boss for a large period of time, multiple times throughout the fight. And I found that really cool. I don't know if I've seen a second boss that had that environment, like interaction, but that was especially cool to see.
I found one. So there had to have been a bug or something, because one of the Ultimatum bosses, I went and fought it, and I was doing literally like 100 damage with my full combo when I normally do about 25,000. And so I came back later and killed it, and it was fine. But in that moment, I was looking around like, is there a gimmick in this zone that lets me do more damage to him? Because I fully believed that there was one, and it wasn't a bug that I wasn't doing any damage.
Yeah.
I fully expected there to be a gimmick, because I remember the fight that you're talking about, and I do like that environmental aspect of that fight.
That same boss I fought in the Ultimatum trial, and he completely bugged out and just flew to fucking Timbuktu and refused to come back down, and he just got basically off-screened by my minions. I had no idea where he was. And
Well,
so
the job got done.
I just sat there on my phone playing RuneScape for like 10 minutes basically as he died.
Hell yeah.
That happened a couple times. Those are like technical things, but it is funny that some of the arenas in Ultimatum seem like really jank, but maybe they'll get worked out. I have no idea if they'll feel better.
All right,
we
we haven't talked much about the trial of the Sigma. I just noticed, right?
So here, I'll talk about my experience. So the very first one you get for both the Sanctum and the Ultimatum, you get a green one that is infinite attempts.
Mm-hmm.
So try that as many times as you want. My experience, I don't know if it was a bug where I had to reload the zone and everything was easier, but I waited until I was 10 levels over leveled to be able to do it because it was absolutely miserable both times I attempted both of them. Like, this was the bug that I was talking about earlier.
The story ones or the second, the post? Okay.
The story ones. So the bug I was talking about where that Ultimatum boss was taking basically 0 damage for my combos, that was when I was exactly the same level as the zone. I came back in 10 levels and I completely obliterated the boss. It wasn't even close. And I was using the same setup with like the same gear. I don't think 10 passive points multiplied my damage by 1,000. It might have been hot.
Did you find any skill gems that you leveled up with?
Nothing that would indicate that. So so the first two you get green ones. So you can do that Sanctum as many times as you want. You can do that Ultimatum as many times as you want. So the first 4 Ascendancy points are basically free. The way, as far as I can tell, the way that you get the next several Ascendancy points is you have to get an RNG drop to get like the actual one that you're supposed to be running in maps, and it has to be of a sufficient level. So like for the Sanctum one, it has to do 2 floors instead of 1 floor. For the Ultimatum one, it has to do 7 out of 10 instead of 4 out of 10. So you have to actually like find one. And so because I've exhausted all of those, I am locked out of my 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th Ascendancy points until I find another drop that is of a sufficient level. And I'm doing maps and I don't have my 5th and 6th Ascendancy points.
It's not really any different than like, I mean, I guess it is because it's your third, but it's basically just offerings, right?
Yeah, but like I don't know. There's no content I can go run to try to target farm it. It's just completely random whether or not I get one. And the fact that the first 2 were quests suggests to me that the when Act 4, 5, and 6 come out, the next 2 mechanics that are the Uber Lab 3 and 4 are going to have quest variants. So I think it's actually harder in the early access.
Certainly not.
Almost certainly not.
I suspect 3 will have a quest variant for the Toda thing that we're assuming is Toda. And that's literally just normal Merc Cruel. Normal Cruel Merc, right? Like it's those 3. And then the 4th one will have to be found in maps just like PoE. That's what I'm thinking.
That makes sense to me, and I don't mind that at all because my 7th and 8th nodes on this build are useless compared to the ones that I'm trying to get right now. I would be perfectly happy with 6 of 8 until I find something in maps. But I'm currently in maps, and I don't have my 3rd one because I failed 1% away from calling strike on the boss twice in Sanctum. And now I'm out.
Why'd you do that?
Invitations.
Why'd you go and do that? You didn't really answer, I think, a pivotal question, which is, do you prefer doing the PoE 2 Sanctum and Ultimatum more than running Lab?
I think if it worked, I think if we had all 4 of them available and you could do one of them 4 times instead of doing 1 Sanctum, 1 Ultimatum, 1 Toda, 1 whatever the 4th thing is.
Oh, so you currently have to mix?
You don't have to, but legally, again, to do to do 2 Ultimatums instead of Sanctum Ultimatum, you can't do that green Sanctum you got, right? You have to go find another Ultimatum.
But most people don't dislike Sanctum. Most people dislike Ultimatum.
I have had the opposite experience.
Yeah, I would say Sanctum is less liked.
I mean,
also
in my case,
I have no
because
idea.
I'm out here having failed all of the invitations that I got as a drop throughout the campaign, and I still don't have my points. I don't like either of them. I'm hoping for some 3rd thing where I can do that instead.
I would
at least give me unlimited attempts on the first 3 of them.
The that's good. I just realized I'm riding the elevator up at the end of Act 3. It says failed to join instance error. The what's it called? The Sanctum, like normal PoE 1 Sanctum, I very much dislike. Normal PoE Ultimatum, I very much like. It's definitely not the opposite in PoE 2, but I like this version of Sanctum way more than PoE 1 Sanctum.
Yes.
And I like this version of Ultimatum less than the other Ultimatum.
Hmm.
So I find myself kind of in the middle, but I probably would still rather run Lab than both of them as of right now. Because I like it's not even just a familiarity. No, I just like Azaro. I like Azaro more than I like the Trial Master, or I liked fighting the candle guy with his cremation filled
I'll
room.
give you that. Azaro is really cool, but I feel
just think
like
the
Lab is
area
incredibly stale nowadays because they realized at some point
it's
that they
only
can't
stale
make
because
it.
of our experience. I mean, if you
No,
somehow
it's because
ported...
they didn't update it in ages, and it's not because they realized it's not palatable for PoE players, so they're not investing resources in it, and like it completely got outpower crept by movement speed and mitigation and what have you, and the traps are just trivial.
If Labyrinth just was ported to this game, I would probably choose that route over those two existing routes. I think
I would do all Sanctums.
I would rather pull my toenails out with pliers than go back to running regular Lab, like PoE 1 Lab. Both of these are way better.
Well, I think in itself that means it's roughly a successful implementation, right? Because it's like we have massively varied opinions on which one we prefer. So clearly, I think that feels like the healthiest thing. If we all feel different, you know.
So
yeah.
Which might be somebody else's favorite, or might become one of our favorites.
Exactly. The thing I disliked about Sanctum and PoE 1 is that, much like Toda, it effectively massively shoehorned you into what build was the most effective to run that sort of content. And I didn't get that feeling in this version of Sanctum at all. I didn't feel like I have to play a Sanctum build to engage with Sanctum. I'm assuming that Toda is going to be similar, where the best Toda, me doing Toda is not going to feel like, let me go make my level 70 Ranger that has 90,000 evasion. It's going to be, I could just play my good build and have a good time. But that was the case in PoE 1. So, going from this to that, this feels a lot more just like palatable to hop into it and have a good time.
I do imagine that I'm going to get used to their real new names eventually, but I do feel like the Sanctum on melee builds is going to be rough, though.
That just seems like melee, to be fair. I've experienced like melee just is you can't get the stink of melee off of melee in an RPG. I just feel like it's always there, kind of. Just being in proximity feels bad. Well, then you're not really playing melee.
But like, melee, how? It feels like it might be rough.
I know. Keep away. I don't want to be close to things. That's the kind of, yeah. But that's a perpetual problem with, I think, how PoE is designed compared to other ARPGs, because the modularity of the classes makes it much more difficult to give melee a distinct advantage, I feel like, over a game like, think of Diablo, where the melee classes inherently have higher damage reduction. You can't do that in PoE. Like, if we just gave a warrior 30% DR, people would be playing caster warriors and just enjoying 30% DR. So
yeah,
it comes with the territory, I think if that's the price to trade to have a game that is as flexible, I think it's fine. They tried with Fortify initially, but then you had people, using Vigilant Strike to give yourself 30 seconds of Fortify and casters. And it's like, all right, cool.
Started with just shield charge Fortify. And then
sure. Oh, yeah.
And then they're like, oh, no, you have to do damage with it. Okay, Vigilant Strike, real slow attack, supported. Boom, there's my Fortify.
Yeah, for half a minute, it was good. But that's stinky. That doesn't feel good.
Two little things about, well, not too little, but I just quickly wanted to talk about the Sigma trial once again, because I feel I want to identify what you say is better than Sanctum and PoE 1, and for me, I feel like it's a very well done mix out of Lab and Sanctum, because like the spinny firebeam trap thing feels a lot like Lab and PoE 1, right? And
the mechanics of Lab, but that's not what I like about Lab. What I like about Lab is the aesthetics of Lab.
Oh yeah,
I like how Lab looks and how Azaro is and his bravado and like the Parandus lore. Like, that's what I like about. I don't give a fuck about the gauntlet traps.
I definitely like how Azaro looks, his lore, and his voice actor.
Oh yeah, we can all agree about on that.
I don't like the lab mechanic from PoE 1, and I don't like the fact that when I kill a Zaro and phase him, I have to wait roughly 2 to 6 business days.
He just wants to hang out. He just wants to hang out with you, man.
And the amount of times that I have died 20 or 30 seconds after he died is just, I never want to go, I never ever want to go back in again.
Wait, how did you die after he died?
Well, not in PoE 2. In PoE 1, after you kill a Zaro's phase,
immortal.
he just is immortal and does like 6 different more moves. He'll slash
queued up,
do things. Yeah, because they're all just queued before he goes down.
For me, it's usually just that he wants to walk up to me and try an auto. So I let him walk up to
he's
me.
Definitely,
and then
I've gotten lacerated by Zaro when he's after everything's gone down. The elevator stops, his health bar goes away. He walks up and just lacerates still.
You guys just have way more higher damage builds than I do, clearly. You phase him so fast that he's not done with his Q. For me, it's always like, oh, just one auto attack and I'm going. But yeah, no, I can totally see that point. But I wanted to know what, like, specifically, Lighty, what made you feel that Sanctum was better in this iteration than in PoE 1? What if it's not?
Because the parts of Sanctum that I dislike are the fact that the downsides overall, when you're first engaging with Sanctum pre-relics, far outweighed the positives on the trade-offs. Like the roguelike mechanic of it, like that part, like the curses versus boons, the curses were way more prevalent. They still are. When you click on the story one, you'll see your screen has, at the second break, from probably like 6 different purple things, and really nothing's positive. So they're still there, but the downsides were, I think, much more toned down. That and the resolve mechanic is exacerbated by the mobs that were occupying Sanctum, specifically things that off-screened you. There was 2 or 3 archer mobs, and then there was a flicker strike guy. Those mobs just don't exist in PoE 2 in the same way. Everything's much more slowly and telegraphed. So I don't feel like I'm getting my resolve or honor obliterated unfairly, I would say. Now, to the point, when you get to the final boss in the Sanctum in this game, it's, I would say, much more difficult, because that arena kind of promotes a soften rage, because he's creating so many cremations. If you have a low DPS build, you're going to kind of probably honor out because the area is full of cremations faster than they're despawning, versus like the candle guy in just the first Sanctum, which was a pushover. So that's even, but I'd much rather a boss fight be a hard part of an encounter than dying to a trash mob I can't see off screen, which is also why I think the body blocking in the overgame feels so bad, because the vast majority of my deaths have been to things that are not bosses. It's a gaggle of crabs keeping me locked down. Like, that's a bad feeling death. Dying to a boss, I feel like I could learn from it and then not make the same mistakes again. But so that was the part of Sanctum I think preyed on that. And I don't feel like that's a problem in this game, because the unfair parts of Sanctum were kind of taken out, if that makes sense.
No, that's good. I can get behind that. Yeah, absolutely. I quickly wanted to say one more aspect, and that's like, did you know from the start what holy water does? Because I got holy water, and then I didn't read when I got it offered or something like that. I don't know whether the info was
I have
there.
no fucking clue what you're talking about. When it comes to this holy water thing,
Well,
you mentioned it
holy
like 3 times.
water
I still
is-
have no idea.
Holy water is what coins are in Sanctum, right? Holy
Oh,
water in
yeah.
Trial
No,
of
it
the
dawned
Sick
on me eventually. Yeah,
It dawned on me when I was at the merchant, and I knew, oh, I could spend it here. But before that, I was like, what is this holy water good for?
I didn't
At
encounter
first,
the
when I
merchant.
found it just gives so much holy water, I
Yeah.
thought, oh yeah, holy water is just going to restore your honor.
That's
but
what I
then
thought
it didn't,
first,
and
yeah,
it ramped up, and it's like, what is this? And then the user interface, you can hover it, but it doesn't create a tooltip. And this hooks back to our conversation about how cool it is that you can, have those skill gem tooltips or item tooltips where you can hover over the keywords and it tells you what the keyword does. Super cool. I want that in more situations. I want to be able, and if it's a problem that you can hover something of the UI and it spawns a tooltip, I understand you don't want that in combat, right? But then at least let me hold the highlight key, right? In my case, Alt, and let me hover over the honor bar, over the holy water, over the different symbols. Let me hold down Alt while I'm hovering an enemy, and then let me unhover the enemy and go up to the enemy's health bar and his debuffs, and let me hover those and spawn tooltips.
Sure.
Right? Ideally, while I'm paused. That would be so massively helpful.
Took like 12 years for us to get to this point. So I thank God every day that I can pause the game now and read something.
You think it's in the books for PoE 3?
I do think it's, I would say, like, historically, as a game franchise, not that they're adverse to quality of life, but they're definitely hesitant to add support for the player in some of these ways. So I see, like, I see the light at the end of the tunnel for you being able to get all the information you'd like and maybe you deserve, but I wouldn't hold my breath on being able to read their bars and stuff.
It certainly has felt in the past that they were adverse to quality of life.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a nice person.
Feeling anymore, but I definitely had that feeling quite a while.
Part of the amazing thing in Path of Exile is, like, the pride that they have, and a lot of times being so staunch, like so adverse to change, is for them like a mark of pride at times, because it's I think at times it differentiates them as a game from a lot of other games. It lets Path of Exile typically, I think, be taken a lot more seriously, because it's not so responsive in a way to the player base, which is frustrating, but also what makes it so the game isn't shit. And it doesn't just devolve into everything that the vocal majority maybe wants. But that comes with also not getting quality of life typically for a lot of things. That's just to prevent dilution. The concentration must be kept pure. So eventually, maybe.
Yeah. No, I absolutely think that's a great point, because one of the things that I said in response to a Twitter post made by Talkative Try, where he said how much he likes PoE 2, is like, I feel like it's really a masterpiece. Work in progress, but a masterpiece. There's still things to iron out, but it feels like they were finally able to, free from the shackles, if you want, from PoE 1, which also, to be fair, like, completely justified. PoE 1 generated all the money that they needed to make PoE 2, but now they were able to make the game that they truly wanted to make and play themselves without being bound by the confines of PoE 1 and what the community wants. And I really hope that, at least until early access ends and the game fully releases, that they're not going to try to cater to player feedback too much. I also don't want them to be deaf to it, right? I want them to take away the right things where they don't compromise their ideals and their goals, but obviously iron out the things that we just complained about.
Do you like this game more than the first game?
Hard to tell. Really hard to tell. I mean, it's early access. We don't know everything. You mean this state right now?
You could expand it to, like, the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, imagine it doesn't have any technical issues, and there's 3 more acts that are of the same quality. Like,
because I don't know how that's going to be. I have to interpolate.
No, I assume they don't shit the bed. Like, as of right now, do you like this game more?
The game that I see at the end of the tunnel, based on the past 48 hours of playing.
Yes. Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I clearly like it more than any new league for Path of Exile, which might be the novelty factor, but I've definitely not felt the need to do like a 20-hour league start stream for my own good, because I'm so hyped to play the game. For the last couple league launches in PoE, if I did one, then it was like, hey, it's because content and I want to stream and all, right? But for this game, even if I hadn't streamed, I wanted to play from Friday night through Saturday afternoon or evening. That was my plan from the beginning, even if I hadn't made content.
Nice.
And and it didn't get super boring for me, right? Like with PoE 1, I reach a point where I repeatedly grind zones and I'm just like, oh, I want to go to sleep, right? Because it's I don't want to say it's boring, but it's like, if you've played the same game for 10 years and you kind of know what you like and you make similar builds all over.
I could definitely see it being a breath of fresh air that's just inherently of a higher quality, because it has the baseline structure of Path of Exile, Do you feel that way also, Baylor? I know you said you've streamed obviously a lot of it, so.
Yeah, I mean, so
You're choosing between your children. I understand that. It's like
streaming a lot of it. It's hard. It's so early. I feel like the
Which kid's your favorite? You got to tell me which kid's your favorite.
I'm pretty sure PoE 2 is going to take the winning slot, but it's worth noting that there's some bias because I made like 800 subs on day one, which is more than my highest. Just that day is more than my highest peak previous. Like that one day worth of subs is more than I've ever had total. So like
Ziz has 34,000
a lot of
subs.
the excitement might be coming from that as well. I don't think so though. I think I'm able to separate them, but I'm not sure. Right? Like I think I'm able to separate them, and I think I'm just enjoying PoE 2 that much that it's going to be just number one forever now.
Is Jousis alive still?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
He's checking the pulse. Well, how about
So
yourself?
then Jousis, how about you on that question? And then I want to, of course, hear it from Lighty.
So PoE 1 and PoE 2, they're still planning to stagger the seasons so that you can play both of them at the same time.
Yes.
Which one I would play and which one I would like more depended heavily on how much build freedom do I have. That's my number one priority playing any game is like, how creative can I be? How much fun can I have doing character customization? So, like, it looked like when they were doing all the gameplay demos and everything, they explicitly were removing Path of Exile 1 interactions that I like to abuse. So, like, cast and damage taken does not exist in the game, but there is barrier invocation, which is basically the same thing, just for energy shield. There's plenty of meta gems. There's plenty of stuff. It's just not as infinitely scalable and abusable to the ceiling like it was before. So I think, personally, there is enough stuff in PoE 2 to keep me interested to do lots of different character builds. Even just in the early access, there's already like 3 or 4 different builds that I have ideas for. I have to wait and see which game is going to have a bigger audience is going to factor into which one I do more builds for. Currently, Path of Exile 2 has a way bigger audience. It's like more than double the current the record concurrent players.
Yeah.
So like if people are on board the hype train of Path of Exile 2 and it has a huge player base and people don't translate that to Path of Exile 1, maybe I'll be doing a lot more Path of Exile 2 content than Path of Exile 1 content, and that necessitates playing Path of Exile. I need more water. Playing Path of Exile 2 more.
Yeah, I see. We're over the 2-hour mark. The vocal fry is
I just haven't been drinking the water as much as I should, and it's really dry in my room.
Thanks for the reminder.
Because it's hot in here, I have a fan pointed directly at me, and that's dehydrating me more.
Are you still drinking water, or like were you done with?
Yeah, I was just taking like
answer
huge gulps of water.
Man's got 5 minutes to live.
Yeah, so I haven't made a decision yet as to which one I will play more, but I definitely like Path of Exile 2, and I would like to play both of them.
Right. What do you say, Mr. Lighty? PoE 1 or PoE 2?
For me, I much prefer PoE 1 as of right now. But I also feel like, to me, this game feels very unfinished. So I'm comparing a cooked cake to raw batter, effectively.
Not only a cooked cake, an augmented cake that has been decorated with toppings for 10 years.
It's so
crack.
It's like it's like a really unfair comparison. I have again, to me, it looks great. Looks way better than Path of Exile 1. Makes sense. Much more modern. Sounds great. Whatever the guy, Camille or Camel, I remember how to pronounce his name. Dude,
there's actually more people than just Camel, but yeah.
Well, it's a name I know, so he gets the praise.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so he's goated. But like for me, the gameplay feels a lot worse than PoE 1, and I came into this after 5 years of waiting, with a really high bar that I would say overall was not met, but I'm not surprised. I just have such high expectations because PoE 1 is so good. So for me, I'm looking for a leap from a game that to me it should be like twice as good as PoE 1, because this is a sequel after many years. So hopefully on release I get that feeling, but as of right now I definitely don't get that feeling. So
okay. Follow up, because I've seen the chat argue about this a lot as well earlier, and there was someone who said that they are going to refund the game because it just didn't meet their expectations either. And do you think that there's like a mismatch of expectation and reality? Because I know that Jousis, Balor, and I played PoE 2 before, and you did not, right?
Nope,
leading
did
up
not.
to this.
I know nothing.
Do you
played
think
nothing.
you would like it more if you had been able to adjust your expectations based on like early gameplay demos?
Well, this I think is a problem. I think this is a schism of their creation, because a lot of this has, I think, been them trying to have their cake and eat it too. It's in early access, and to me, it really feels like a beta, right? And the marketing has, although the world early access is slapped on there, it's being pushed as if this is the release of a century. Yeah. So coming at it from that, a lot of people are coming at it with like, this is a full game. You have a lot of things in game that say like coming soon and stuff like that. So I could see it being off-putting and being like, how is the second part of the game just the same 3 parts again? Like even that being not like the concept of cruel is only known to us because we know what PoE 1 is, but like I could definitely
veterans.
Yeah. But anyone who's like in the know isn't surprised, and I think people who are coming in outside of it either are like, there's definitely a large chunk of them that are surprised, I would say, because things feel unfinished, because it's an unfinished game. There's half the classes, half the campaign, so probably half the end game. So I'm not surprised, but
some potentially important things to remember when you're thinking about that, mostly for you, not for like new people, but like mostly for like us, is a few things. One, half is an understatement. We've only got a third of all the classes in the game. There's literally, and that means we've also got like a third of all the active skills, weapon types, everything. There's a ton coming.
Yeah, so there's literal weapon categories that are not in the game. There's no daggers, there's no swords.
And this is probably the more important bit. This release, I don't think was intended to be this big. The fact that they're making us pay for a free-to-play game, when they said this is what's happening, I don't think they expected anywhere near the response they got from outside of the PoE community, because they were expecting when it goes free to play, that's when we'll get a lot of people. And then as soon as it started to pick up hype, we saw them lose their minds over server capacity. We saw them like Jonathan on like 5 different podcasts was like, this what are we gonna do?
Yeah,
so I don't think they actually intentionally marketed it to everyone. I think like
I think
conception
they
it was for us.
Because
then
when you have,
oh my god, everybody is in.
Right, but when you have the head of your game going on 5 podcasts, that's a lot of advertising. When you're paying big people to play your game, that's a lot of advertising. When you're giving, like, there's no doubt they're marketing the fuck out of this game. So that's where it's like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like you're doing a ton of marketing, and then you get a ton of players. That's great. But then, like, with that is going to come an amount of criticism that the game isn't complete, obviously, because the game isn't complete.
So what I'm saying is, totally. I don't think they had that plan right at the beginning. I think they announced it and went, oh shit, the greater community. I think
Jonathan maybe had it, but I think that the people in charge of PoE's marketing and that division probably that's their only goal, is to blow the game up as much as possible.
So you're not taking into account timeline. What I'm saying is, like, right at the beginning when they were like, hey, we'll do this early access, the thought was it'll be just the PoE fans who are coming in for early access. It won't be literally that huge.
1 million people.
And then it was like, as soon as it launched and they realized the hype that was around it, as soon as they announced it, then they had to pivot into, okay, we have to
That
get
makes sense.
everybody else more
But
interested, right? Like that's how it feels like it happened to me.
I've been in this franchise long enough to know not to respect their timelines too much because typically they're wildly off base. So like when they say this EA will last a minimum of 6 months, I'm expecting a December 2025 release in a year.
Nothing else makes sense. It's
So,
going
to
to be
me, it's
longer
like-
than 6 months.
Yeah, that's why, I expect, and that's totally fine. My opinion of this game now is only what I could play now, which is a half-cooked game that's still better than most every other ARPG on the market. So that just goes to show how good the game probably will be on full release. But I'm comparing it to, obviously, it's the sequel to Path of Exile. So comparing it to Path of Exile, it doesn't feel as good to me now because it would be weird if it was, in a way.
Well, does it feel, and that's the question I guess we should have asked from the beginning.
Better than Diablo 4? Probably, yeah.
Really,
that's not even a question, dude.
Spider-Man.
Does it feel better than Path of Exile 1 when you first played Path of Exile 1?
No. And then I don't think so, because I think there was a lot more systems added to PO. Like there was a lot more systems created in Path of Exile that didn't exist anywhere else in the ARPG scene. And I think most of the systems I really enjoy in PoE 2 exist in other ARPGs actively. So things like everything I've mentioned, quality of life wise, like even the pause screen or the glossary or the tutorial, things I think a lot of newer players are going to definitely flock to. Even things like the minion respawning, the spirit system, the icons displaying on the quest progression, WASDA, none of these are new to PoE. PoE didn't make any of these things. Like this is all existing technology. There's implementing them in the game, but when PoE first came out, the initial gem system, the crafting currency, the passive tree, that didn't really exist anywhere else. So coming from nothing to that was mind-blowing. That's what, if I'm comparing it to when the game's first created, but you really can't make that comparison because that was their first game made in like a fucking garage, right? That are just fans of Diablo. This is a multi-million-dollar company 10 years after making a massively successful, what I consider the best RPG of all time. This is their sequel. So to me, there's less like amounts of ingenuity being represented, and it should be held, for me at least, to a higher standard because this is the second product, the second game they've made. So that's where I'm coming from, at least. Yeah.
Yep. What drew me to Path of Exile 1 initially, what really hooked me, is that it wasn't polished and that they didn't think about, it's really easy to get 30 attacks per second on a claw with 50 life gain on hit and just have a ridiculous looking animation and be immortal and unkillable.
Mm-hmm.
So that it was like someone like putting up a website and having like absolutely no security, and any hacker could go in and change the website.
You're not going to like rebottle that lightning. Yeah. It's like when they do things like WoW Classic. I've played WoW on vanilla and then I played WoW Classic. They feel nothing alike. When you're in the Wild West of a game, it's like you're on the fucking fringe. Like they're putting the game out then because they had no other choice. PoE 2 EA they're putting out now because they can, and it's pretty well polished to a degree. They could, I would prefer if they waited another year and we just got a full game. Then
I would describe Path of Exile 1, when I started playing, I would describe it as an irresponsibly good game.
Yeah.
Is the way that I would describe it. Path of Exile 2 is a lot more polished, doesn't let me get away with as many shenanigans, but I'm weird. It's a better game for it. Not everyone is like a pen tester, right? People probably, appreciate a more polished game as opposed to a game that lets you, I don't know, theoretically go into the source code and
for sure, definitely more polished.
Fireballs, like that's fun for a little bit, but like we're trying to make a game here. We're trying to make an ARPG here. So maybe I'm not as hyped as when I first discovered Path of Exile 1, but that's just it doesn't matter.
I saw a post on Reddit, which I would not recommend looking at because it's a fucking dumpster fire in every direction right now. But it said something along the lines of Path of Exile 2 is the best advertisement for PoE 1 I've ever seen. And I think they meant it negatively, like a backhanded compliment. But I think it's more of that, like, I think a lot of people who play this PoE 1 early access that have either never heard of it or are new to the genre are going to have like a pretty good time playing this, and I'm sure they'll play again as the game becomes more complete. But I think when they discover PoE1, like I feel like there's going to be a level of sinking your teeth into that I don't feel like currently exists in this game because of the complexity. And obviously, it's like you're reaching like Dwarf Fortress levels of convoluted in PoE1 at times, but I haven't really felt that represented in the game yet because there's like a lot of hand holding. But yeah.
Because I'm in maps, I'd like to talk about what I just experienced for the first time, which is
Sure.
strong boxes. It puts like a dark mist, and that's where the monsters come out of instead of like appearing instantly when you open the box. And I'm using flash grenades, and you can throw a flash grenade into the dark mist and completely illuminate the entire thing for a split second, and it's really funny to me.
Nice.
That was a great interjection. I guess what I would like to quickly also know is, do we expect PoE2 to help PoE1 in a big way? Or like, I mean, do you think that the people who stay with PoE2 when 3.26 is announced are going to give PoE1 another chance if they've played it before and didn't like it? Or the people who've never played it are going to play it and like it?
The first one, yes. The second one, probably not.
It'll probably be pretty grating, honestly. If your only experience of the franchise is 2 first, going to 1 is going to feel probably rough.
I feel like you'd be slightly more prepared for like, oh, I know how this system works already. I'm prepared for the lack of tutorial on it, but it's like playing like the 5th installment of a game before playing the 3rd one. Like, there's such huge polish that went into the 5th one that isn't there. So even like, even if you like the gameplay loop more, you might be put off by the lack of QOL.
Something you mentioned earlier was that like there's a lot less onus on the player's defenses because this game's a lot more simplified in that regard. So you might not put as much stock in getting your resistances capped or investing in armor and things like that. And then you're gonna get railed like instantly. So
you don't like spiderweb your tree and get 150% life in the Path of Exile 1 tree. You're gonna have a bad time.
I think it'll be jarring and probably a bit damning on your first or 2 characters, but if you stick with it, there's obviously just more depth and more to do if you can get into it. But it's definitely not polished compared to this game. That's without question. Like I made a list of quality of life stuff because only you mentioned the question about this is like my list of things I'd like to see in PoE1 that are in PoE2. I've mentioned a lot of them, but one of them is like the buyback option from vendors that we've been asking for that for fucking 12 years. Now I've never catastrophically vended something, but I've watched Carve do it. And that was sad.
The Victor flask.
Yep. So things like that, or the portal button being just fully implemented without scrolls is really easy to do. Previewing microtransactions. There should be no reason we should have to click a fucking YouTube video to watch it
right now. I thought
it might be with the change they did. If it is, that's fine. But like historically, we had to watch a YouTube video.
They uploaded an unlisted YouTube video for every single microtransaction.
So pausing, I feel like they could introduce pausing and be fine. The keyword glossary, like clicking on keywords, that could see that happening. The minion auto respawning, like I feel like it would be really unoffensive, just minions auto respond in PoE1, especially like a lot of them, like that. A lot of the systems are so antiquated for minions in PoE1 that it just feels real bad. Like the spirit system as well. There's a cool thing that someone pointed to me today that you can preview pre-allocations of passive points on your tree. So when you're putting a point in your passive tree, as you click the point but don't click accept, it shows you it shows you like the outcome of that decision, which doesn't hurt to have, right? So that's fine. And then like WASDA, I think it's kind of comical that there's controller support but no real WASDA support in PoE1. I might not use it, but it's just like the option should exist, But that's like those are all things I could see immediately that PoE2 has that PoE1 would only benefit from.
That's a little bit of a pivot, but great information to have. Quickly, Balor, what's your thought on PoE1 being enjoyable for people who are gaming now because of PoE2?
I think when the next PoE1 league comes out, it's going to be the largest one ever by a long shot because it's going to get a lot of the people who did PoE2. I think probably a decent majority, well, people who have come to PoE 2 for the first time in the franchise or in a long time will then give PoE 1 a go. I think a
Worse
large
retention.
majority of them will not love it.
Yeah,
I think a
agree.
large majority of them will not love it. People who do love PoE but haven't PoE 2 but haven't been playing PoE 1 will probably not stick around that long for PoE 1. They'll probably just keep coming back for 2, which I think is fine. I don't have any problem with it at all, but that's what I think is going to happen.
I had a lot of people mentioned to me, probably as many people mentioned that they didn't like PoE 2 and were like just going to stop playing. A lot of them said, I didn't really like PoE 2 right now. I'm gonna go make a Necro Settlers character. Like, I've heard that sentiment quite commonly. Like,
Okay,
this made me want to play Path of Exile, but not this PoE at the moment because it didn't feel as good. So
I'm
kind of like
going to call
juiced
them all
up.
out real quick because I've been clicking on people and then like grabbing their profiles and just opening them quietly. I've had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've had 8 people tell me they're going to quit PoE 2 and just go back to playing PoE 1 because it's trash. 100% of them are higher level when I woke up than when I went to bed.
Oh.
So fucking bullshit, liar.
Wait, you just said you clicked their
to say it's
profiles?
like trash.
Is there?
Sorry, I opened their like Twitch things and many of them, well, I've only got 8 that added me to their friends list. There's been more that said it, so I can't track the rest of them. But there's
Okay,
only
no,
been
I
8
thought-
that were like people around that are on my friends list, not like, and like I look at their character again and they're playing again and they're higher
I
level.
thought there was like a
No, there's
like
been
a
a lot more
website
than 8.
maybe
There's
where
just
you
only
could
8
look
that I
at.
can track, to be fair.
Trash
So-
is crazy. I equally cannot fathom or like respect the opinion of anybody who's saying the game is 2 out of 10 as much as, or like 1 out of 10 as much as someone who's saying it's 10 out of 10. Like, to me, both of those are like literally
I've been saying
impossible.
9 out of 10
Like,
because I see
I
the
can see
vision.
it. I mean, you're like, Glaze Master Balor. I get it. 9 out of 10 possible.
I'm here for it. I bought throat numbing spray. I love it that much.
I like, for people who are saying it's like the game is perfect. The second you say perfect, I'm like, you're just full of shit. Like, it's like it's literally not even done.
Like,
it's not even
by
done.
their own admission, there's a lot
Yeah.
of flaws, and it's literally defined as not finished yet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
also,
there's
if
a
you
lot of things.
if you go into it and say that this is just objectively a bad game, I don't believe you.
Yeah. I think you probably, if it's your first ARPG ever, I mean, I could maybe see it, but like because it's a 1 of 1, but I don't know. Like, if you played Diablo 4 and you preferred that and you said, yeah, PoE 2 wasn't for me, makes sense. If you play a Last Epic and say, yeah, that game, I prefer the pacing of that game and the depth of content, makes sense. But if you're like, that game is unplayable, like that, I have no, like, I can see you not having a great time all the time, or like it being really taking a lot of time, or being challenging, or just like not your cup of tea. But even if the gameplay was absolute dog shit, just the visuals alone, I feel like puts it at least at a 2 or 3 out of 10.
Wait,
Just
the visuals alone put it above 5, dude.
that's crazy. 5 just for visuals is wild. Imagine buying a Ferrari and this fucking no engine. That would be like.
But it looks really
that's
cool.
crazy. Yeah, it's a great giant paperweight.
Maybe I just like having it in my living room and looking at it.
It's true.
I don't even care about the exhaust
I
fumes.
put my mattress in it.
Yeah.
It's a car
Restore
bed, but it's a Ferrari.
Restore my cash. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've seen the every now and then I've seen players who said they haven't played PoE 1, but they went into PoE 2. They played other ARPGs, and they really like the slower paced combat of PoE 2, where they can actually see what's going on, and it feels like a reactive back and forth. And that's like pretty much how I feel about it as well. It's like, yeah, there's still a lot of
Sounds
things
like
to
a
be ironed
responsible,
out.
fully fledged opinion. I would say that makes sense.
There's a subset of people that play video games that like to express skill. They like to overcome a challenge through like increasing their own skill at the game, or like doing a complicated series of mechanical movements, stuff like that. And then there are people who are results oriented, and they're like, I want to have an extremely powerful character, and I don't care how I got there. And there's other camps of people as well. But like, I feel like there's something, without catering too hard to one of those, I feel like there's something for everyone here.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that makes sense. I just think the second part is just locked behind a level of friction that some people it might be off-putting to them. That again, like if you're used to like ARPGs that you could complete extremely or get to the what would be the end game extremely fast, like it's definitely not. That's not what you're going to have this experience here. Like you're not going to get to the end of Diablo 4 is like 4.5 hours, 5 hours maybe. Like that's not going to happen. We have that in PoE 1 at the moment. I don't know if anyone like if you try to speed run PoE 2, just because of the way that the maps are laid out, I'm really curious if it can be done in like a super fast way.
Because racing tech relied almost entirely on finding the right setup where you could like smoke mine flame dash through a zone while also getting kills and refilling your flasks and getting the right passive points. Like PoE 2 racing is going to be a lot slower for one, but also like I don't want to say like RNG because it's not going to be like
that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, because like reacting to the instance that you get.
Yeah, it's much less methodically seeded. I think it's more interesting from a viewer perspective of like a speedrunner, like a proper clear, because it's like you're watching something like Games Done Quick and the guy's doing like fucking Zelda with like frame perfect inputs that are identical to the whatever. It's not going to be like that. I think it's going to be
walls.
Like, oh, exactly. Like, yeah, it's going to be like, oh, I've got this. Now my routing has changed and now my skill setup has changed to where like maybe, they have to be more fluid with their decision making, which I think is a much higher skill cap and a much different discipline. That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like this, watching a good player or like an endgame player at a high tier of content in PoE 2 will be significantly more entertaining to watch, but also like a lower barrier of entry. Like it just anyone could watch it and enjoy it and empathize. And with PoE 1, it's very much an acquired flavor, and you have to kind of be familiar with the game.
It's like mechanical execution,
then you just see a blur of stuff happening on the screen. What is even going on? Right, and in PoE 2 you can sort of tell. Yeah, that's fair. I think personally, for me, this also will help me appreciate more what PoE 1 is, and I think and I hope that PoE 1, now that PoE 2 is in live service, and it does provide the PoE for the people who do like the methodical approach and who do like a little bit of a more tedious game, I guess, and a little bit more back and forth between the monsters and you. Now they can allow PoE 1 to be the blaster and zoomer game that people want from it, and like kind of keep the things that slow people down and make the interactions more meaningful, for lack of a better term. And they can keep that for PoE 2 and truly embrace the zoomer nature of PoE 1 in a healthy way. I mean, I also hope that a lot of the quality of life changes come back, but like you pointed out, you had a list. I'm pretty sure GGG has a list, or someone, even Mark or Jonathan said that Mark had a list of things that he wants to port back.
Yeah, I hacked his cell phone to get that. Yeah.
No, not your list. He has his own one. Yeah. But yeah, and I also just hope that Balor is right, that PoE 1 will receive a lot more attention now, but I'm worried that we'll have to wait until PoE 2 is out of early access and fully released until that will actually
next
come
league
to fruition.
Is allegedly late February, so maybe. So,
I mean, it is a league that was in development for at least half a year, right?
And they will schedule the content updates for PoE 2 to not coincide with the launch of PoE 1. I'm not that I have like insider knowledge, but like they will, right? Like they will.
It makes sense, obviously, for both from a how they work point of view, but also from a marketing and sustaining the player base point of view.
Yeah.
So when one of those two leagues is inevitably delayed, are they going to push them both back?
Good question.
Because it's never not happened in the past 3 years.
No comment. I'm hoping that they just commit to 4-month leagues when it's time to do them both, because they don't make 3.
Well, we're currently at a 2-month league, and we've never had a 4-month league in the past 3 years. So I'd be surprised if we get a 4-month leagues back on track. That would be surprising to me.
That'll be fun. I'm glad I'm not one person that has to deal with that. I'll just play whatever they give me. But
Amen, brother.
it sounds like a headache trying to deal with that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. I don't want to keep you too long here, guys. We've been talking for more than 2.5 hours. I'm very aware, but
I need to get
fun
started.
Conversations.
We need to go.
Have you not been playing this whole time?
I mean, yeah, but I've been streaming.
Oh, that's okay.
Fair enough. The great thing is I can hold the stream now, and when I press the end button, I'll still be live, and I can sit here, do a little bit of a after chat with the people who are still here. I know you're gonna all leave during the outro, but I can entertain the crowd and then send you all over to Balor in a bit. But yeah, any closing remarks? Anything that you last minute were, I wanted to bring in that little point, but maybe not something that I have to respond to, but like just a little remark. I don't know.
I got one. Yeah.
Okay. I'll look for one.
I love all the voice acting in this game and PoE 2.
Yeah.
Except the witch. I fucking hate the witch. For some
really?
reason, they made her like a child now. She used to be an edgy adult, like teen.
Used to be
that
a
was
comedian.
like dark. Yeah. And now she just whines a lot at me. And it upsets me. And that is the only
I did
only
like
real
the PoE
complaint.
1 sassy witch.
Yeah, she's not sassy. She's like 13 and she's just on TikTok all the time yelling at me on her fucking phone. That's what it feels like now. I don't like her. Yeah, that's it. That's my only complaint I experience every time I cast a spell.
My closing remark is I've started doing maps, and one death you do lose the map, even though there's 6 portals, so that's just for party play. But there isn't a meaningful difficulty spike. It's not like, oh, I beat the campaign, now I go into maps and suddenly I have minus 30 res and everything's one-shotting me. It feels like the difficulty is completely smooth. I haven't noticed a spike.
Is there a meaningful loot increase?
I mean, there was a regular mob earlier that dropped 1,800 gold. That hasn't happened again, but I mean,
how much does like a gamble cost for you though now?
Depends on the item. Gambling a crossbow, what was that? I'd have to go check. I can check because there's portals.
I'd be curious because that's been scaling quite harshly.
Okay, so I currently have, as soon as it loads, I have 98,000 gold. Regular items in the shop are anywhere from a completely white item is like 2,800 gold, and a magic is like 4,000 to 6,000, and then a rare with 4 mods on it is 23,000 gold.
Okay.
If I go to the gamble, which is Alva over here, if I were to gamble, it is 12,000 gold for a random crossbow.
All right. That's a lot of fucking gold.
Okay.
I've also found a hideout. I haven't been to it yet, but I see it on the map. After I beat this map, I'm going to go try to clear the hideout.
Nice.
Yeah. Huge. I want a hideout. I know what Balor's closing remark is. I'm sure you want to advertise the fact that you made a rudimentary filter for PvP.
It's irrelevant already.
Yeah, NeverSync came out with one.
About an hour before this podcast came out, NeverSync did just a better version. It's the same idea. Nothing's hidden. It's just basic tiering, but it's NeverSync doing it, so it's better.
So it's just highlighting like if Exalt drops, it's more prominent, like that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Just like item looks. No actual filtering, which was the same mine was, which I put out like yesterday morning or whatever. But mine was my experience in loot filters in Notepad is 8 years old. So like mine wasn't like it was functioning, but it's nowhere near as good as. I don't know, like 2.5, 3 hours or something.
Yikes! All right.
Well, NeverSync said he wasn't coming out with one for 2 weeks, so it was worth the time. If I knew that I just had to wait one more day, I wouldn't have bothered. But oh well.
I mean, remember that NeverSync made filters before Filterblade existed.
Yeah, well, so did I in text document. That's why I was able to do it. It's the same language, but still. Oh well, there you go. It's fun.
Oh, here's one more closing remark. Make sure to use your flash grenade on spiders because they have 8 eyes, so it stuns them 4 times as hard.
Oh, nice. Where do I find my
doesn't
flash grenade on
really.
my witch?
You can. Let me see. What weapon does a flash grenade require?
Crossbow, I assume.
It specifically requires crossbow. You can't use it with
Nice.
anything
I'll
else.
just store one in my ass and I'll just flashbang.
You can weapon swap it.
Yeah, use weapon swap it.
I don't
can
think
do
I
that.
have the dex. I have to.
You get the
Just use a low level.
worst crossbow.
Yeah, the level
The
1
lowest
crossbow.
the lowest
Wow.
attribute requirement.
Just a weapon
crossbow.
swap of flashbang.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
Dark Souls eats
Unironically,
your
I
heart
would
out.
recommend trying that at the very least.
Does the flashbang get better with levels, or you think like you reckon like
It
a
does more
low-level
damage
flashbang?
with levels, which then translates to more stun.
Oh yeah,
But
that's what
like
I
white
figured.
mobs, you can do like 20 damage and it'll stun them.
Okay, cool. Well, my closing remark would be just an appeal to the audience to not judge the game too harshly based on this early access, which I think that was in the subtext of everything we said during this episode, but I just want to clearly say that, hey, give it a full chance. Don't quit in the middle of the act playthrough and say it's a shit game. At least try and make it to maps and see how it is there. And if you don't like it now, come back when they do content updates and give it a fair chance. It's a lot of things that you can't really make very well if you don't have a large testing audience. And Piri 1 just had all these years of live service development that made it so well-rounded and intertwined with its community, and Piri 2 just didn't have that time yet. So I'm pretty sure the game will be a lot better in a year from now when the full release most likely will happen.
Undoubtedly, yeah.
That's it. Right. So, way too long podcast. We usually try to do these for 90 to 120 minutes, but there was a lot to talk about, and this was kind of the replacement for the extended discussion that Slippery Jim usually does in the lead up to a league, right? Where Lighty and Jousis and Slippery Jim and who's the fourth guy? Thragog is always there, right? No.
Sure.
Who's
He
the fourth
was there
guy
a couple of
normally?
times.
I was the fourth guy once.
Yeah.
Or twice. But yeah, he didn't do one because he wanted to go in blind. So I was like, can I steal your prime guests? And we do an episode before. And then we didn't do an episode before because we felt like, oh, that's really not that much to talk about.
Yeah, I said no to you like twice.
Yeah, Lighty said no.
I said
but then
straight up,
also,
there's no way I'm doing a fucking thing before the game comes out.
Yeah,
Like-
I mean, usually we just speculate and we're mostly wrong.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem like a lot of value add.
yeah, and then even if there was value, the game would have come out like 2 or 3 days after, and all the value would have been lost then. So yeah, I thought it
think of
was
the
better
law-
to do an early
you know?
first impressions.
Now that
And,
we
yeah,
actually know what we're talking about a little bit, having played the game, our opinion is a little bit more relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we go into more, let's call it a quit here. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And as always, I want to say a massive thanks to the people who do support the podcast monetarily and the people who support these content creators monetarily. Because, as independent content creators, we all depend on your financial monetary support. That is how you generate an income. And if you don't support, I'm not mad, but support these other guys. I have a job now. I have an apprenticeship. I'm working towards something. I'm trying to get you as many podcasts as possible. The people who do support, however, will be shown on the end screen. And we have another episode coming in a week's time where we'll talk to said Sir Gog as well as Snoobe. And we'll probably be able to talk a lot more about the end game because we've all had some hands-on experience then with mapping, with towers, with all the stuff that happens there. So if you want to know when that podcast is, you go to bit.ly/FATED145, or you follow me on Twitter, or you annoy me on Twitch in my chat. I'll be streaming periodically, probably every day, but no promises made. And if I forgot something, then I'll say it in the next episode. And now you all tune into BalorMage's stream, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash.